Hello and welcome to round 5 of the Automobilista Australia Rookie Cup. Just ticked over to qualifying. I do apologise for the ever so late start. Had to take care of a couple things, but we're out here. Qualifying is underway. So it is a 1 lap dash / shootout for those that haven't watched any of the previous rounds. And Turmo has begun his time lap, as has Brownie. And we've also got Cracker and Damien, as well as Glenn Miles, out on the circuit at the moment. This is a short little circuit, the south course at Virginia International Raceway. A few of the drivers have been complaining obviously midweek that it is a obviously tight and twisty circuit, but to their benefit. Can't go around obviously slipstream fests like Johannesburg last time out. The fastest time in practice, well, we did have a couple 1 minute 13s that were set, so that is something to look out for. With Wayne Whitmore fastest once again, and Steve Bolger second fastest. And Turmo crosses the line, 1 minute 16.3. He'll be a little bit disappointed with that. With his fastest time, a 1 minute 14.7 in practice. So, a little disappointed. Brownie, he just pips him by 2/1000ths of a second to go provisional P1. And, Cracker was up by 10th. I don't think he is anymore, because and he goes, but he's going to try and complete a lap. That'll obviously move him in front of people that do set a lap. No, he's decided to call it. And so he will start towards the back. And Glenn Miles has set a lap time. He set a 1 minute 16.8. Or 0.9, sorry. So that's him done. Let's just have a look. So Wayne Whitmore out on track, as is Damien. Damien now beginning his time up. In fact, we will ride on board him, or on board with him, into turn 1. He's classified as turn 2, but it's just a kink. Coming out now onto this little back straight. Left kink. Oh, and he's lost it under braking, and he's off into, well, I was going to say into the boonies, but the car's just pulled up there. And I do believe we have been joined by an extremely bored Scruff / L Chief / Matt Williams.
Hello.
How's it going? It's been a long time since you've been in the commentary box.
I am dying of boredom.
That is no
I've seen 3 lesbians, a potential AFL footballer, so arguably a lesbian in drag. I'll let you know if I see any more, but for now I think we should get onto that guy's lap because it looks incredible.
Yeah, so we've got Whitmore. At the moment, he's 1 second up at the first split, so it looks like he's going to continue his hot form. Back, we're right on board.
Fat guy in blue shirt.
As Scruff yells obscenities at randoms as he sits in his car.
The A car.
Or A car. Whitmore coming out of the final turn. 1 minute 13.7. So that's the, well, It's not his fastest time, but it is the second fastest time, and it's still faster than the second driver's fastest time. So Steve Bolger, second fastest in practice, set a 1:13.9. So he's going to have to go faster than his personal best to nick
lighting
pole
him up
position.
coming out of the final corner did cost him a bit there.
And Brian Walsh is currently 1.3 down. Oh, and it's going to be a little bit more than that coming into the final corner. Double right-hander, having driven this track in the Caterhams at ARW. That corner is pretty tricky. Had a spin or two there myself. And these cars, I could just imagine it being even more difficult. So he crosses the line, he sets a lap time. Obviously with that spin, and it's a fair way down, but still set a lap time, so he'll start in front of Cracker, who obviously spun and abandoned his lap.
A fat guy with blue shirt is driving a Kia Sportage.
It's good to know, as one of your drivers, Gary Neville, begins his lap.
Oh, this will be pole for sure. He loves getting pole.
I'm sure he does. Very conservative through turn 1.
That is one thing of Gary, as I tend to be serious for 32 seconds. He's generally a little bit too cautious, especially in these one-shot qualifying. I think he just needs to let him hang a bit more. In most situations.
That said, though, he's about 1.5 tenths off in the first sector, so not a bad start to his lap at the moment. Not a bad start.
I am bored and just making things up here. So.
It's going to come over this left-hand kink. Very easy to run wide onto the grass here. He's avoided that 9 tenths down at the second split. Pretty conservative through the final 2 right-handers there, but he's got through there safely. Could have gone on the throttle a bit earlier. That said, though, not a bad lap. This should move him up to provisional P2, and it does. 1 minute 15.0, which is his fastest lap by half a second. So he's pulled out his best lap when it mattered. Just have a look. Steve Bolger out on track at the moment, as is Brendan Ross.
Both of them could be very entertaining to watch through qualifying, as the first set of lesbians are going with some takeaway, possibly Chinese.
Well, I do love a bit of box, as Brendan Ross exits the final turn, and he just goes P2 by a quarter of a tenth there. That was Brendan Ross. So Gary Neville unlucky not to start provisionally on the front row there, but Ross just did enough. And Stuyve out there, he's 2.5 tenths down in the middle split, coming into the final 2 turns here. Very conservative, especially under braking there. But we'll see how he goes here. And he nicks P2, 1 minute 14.4. So he's 7 tenths off, but he did enough to get on the front row, and probably a little bit of time there in the last 2 corners there for him to make up too.
Speaking of making up time, these 2 methods are definitely on the way to their dealer's house. They are flying.
Alright, so just to go over the qualifying results for everybody at home, we've got Wayne Whitmore starting from pole position, Stuyve Bolger in P2, Brendan Ross in P3, Gary Neville P4, Brownie P5, Turmo P6, Glenn Miles P7, Lee Sanford in P8, Damien P9, Brian Walsh P10, and Mike Coulston and Cracker did not set a lap time, both of them having spins on their lap and aborting. And just looking at the chat, I did see a comment somewhere, I think on Facebook, from Brock Harvey saying he doesn't know the track, so he's going to pussy out. So Brock, that is a piss poor effort. Piss poor effort from you. Who cares if you don't know the track?
Wholeheartedly. Who
cares if you don't know the track? It's what rate do you want to race? It's just racing, mate. It's a rookie cup. It's not racing for sheep stations. Just jump in and have some fun. But
he needs the practice.
Well, you've heard it here first. Scruff says Brock needs the practice. Anyway, we'll take a short break as I've got to conduct the driver's briefing, but we shall be back, and hopefully Scruff has not been stabbed to death by a meth addict. But we shall be back.
He made a shot.
That did make it to the broadcast, so your brother did make a shot. So that is something
It's not him.
for everybody out there.
Some tubby dude who's lying down on the stairs.
There you go. All right, so is the warm-up. So we'll just come in and talk about the championship standings. Currently in the rookie class, we've got Gary Neville leading the championship. He's
Gary.
picked up 2 wins in the rookie class, and he's had 4 second places. He would have had more wins, but obviously he missed the first round, and the second round.
Did he get butt plucked a little bit in that one?
I think that was Kansai. I can't remember, but Whitmore was he put himself down in the wrong class at the start and sort of skewed the points a bit. Otherwise, Gary Neville would have won he would have won the first 5 races in rookies. Either way, he's had a pretty solid season so far on 168 points. In second place is Glenn Miles. He's on 144. It's been pretty consistent, although his results of late have dropped off. We have had a couple, obviously, newcomers come about, which have taken some points off him, but he's finished in every race, so that's why he's up there. In fourth place, newcomer, see Ben Percy, only started at Kansai West.
He's taking a break this evening.
Yep, he's not here this evening, but he's had a pretty decent season, and having sort of, when Ben Purse has arrived, obviously Coops hasn't shown up for any race since, so maybe they're the same person, but just different name. But Coops is 5th on 106.
Is Coops here tonight?
I don't believe he is, so once again...
If he was, then that would be suspicious.
Yeah, but I think it's safe to say that Coops and Ben Purse are the same person.
At the very least, they're mortal enemy.
Yes, they must be. And then we've got Brian Walsh. He's missed a couple rounds, but he had a very good round. We had very good first race there at Johannesburg. I believe he got onto the podium in that race. He got on the podium outright, so it was a very solid effort from him. Yes, he did, because Lime Mitch, I believe, took that race. Speaking of Lime Mitch, he's 7th, and obviously he's taken a first, a second, and a first in the only round he's participated in the rookie class. So he's had a pretty solid start, but I don't believe he's here tonight. So obviously he's going to lose quite a few points, although I don't think Brownie... Oh no, actually no, Brownie probably will jump in front of him should he finish in all those spots. Or should he finish in all these races. Right, moving on to the Pro B class. See, we've currently got Steve first on 224 points. He's only won 2 races. It's been wildly inconsistent. He's had pace in a few races, but and qualifyings, but he keeps making mistakes, especially in that last round at Johannesburg. He made a couple big errors, and that cost him, as you can see, picking up 16 and 14 points when he could have been quite a bit higher. And then obviously we've got Turmo in P2. He's been fairly consistent. He's shown flashes of some real speed, and then he's also made quite a number of errors as well. He's also been caught up in other people's misfortunes. And Brendan Ross, he's won a few races. He's finished on the podium in a couple others, and he's been pretty average in some others. So he's been up and down. Even though he's finished first and second quite a lot, he's not made it easy a number of times for himself. And obviously he missed the Kansai round. And Whitmore, he probably would be leading the championship. But, in fact, I'm pretty sure he would be. But he obviously put himself in the wrong class at the start of the season. And that's obviously stuffed his championship up. That said, though, still 3 rounds to go. So who knows what could happen. And then obviously we've got Cracker, followed by Scott Morrill, whose wife, I believe, is in the hospital. So hopefully all is well there. So hopefully...
Yes, wishing all the best to Carol.
And
I don't know her name, but, why not try?
that's it. And Lee Sanford.
The Adams family is walking past me.
And Lee Sanford there, he's only driven the last 2 rounds. Anyway, go to see. There's a shot of that's from, I believe, turn 2. Turn 3, 4, and then right at the extreme bottom right is turn 5. So 3, 4, and 5 right there. And it is very tricky. Obviously, turn 3 there off camber, as is all those corners there. So that's something to look out for. Did see a couple guys spin there in qualifying. Anyway, so it's ticked over. We're in the race session now, as you can see on your screen. And
can I take us through the grid?
Why not, Scruff? I don't know.
This will be fun.
I don't know if you're watching on your phone. I'm gonna guess that you're not, but
No, I just need to know when the formation starts. It'll be golden. Yeah, sometimes someone will look skinny, but then they're fat, or they'll look fat, but then they're skinny.
Sorta.
Who's the Asian dude that's just tripping me out? No, and he dropped his bag. Ooh, he had to be a ninja there, didn't he?
Oh dear.
That's not offensive if I'm recording his skills.
And they are away on the formation lap, and I do apologise, Baker, that there is no background music for the brakes, but I got copyright struck a couple of times, so don't want to go and put more music in and have videos get taken down and the like. So that's why there's no more music anymore.
That is unfortunate.
It is. So, Scruff, are you
fortunately for him, we have Wayne Whitmore on pole. Second place could very well be Steve Bolger. Third place, pretty sure it's Brendan Ross. How many people are in the field?
12.
In fourth place is... I think you should do it.
In fourth place is Gary Neville.
Gary Neville. Yeah, I was just going to say that.
In fifth is Brownie.
Of course it's Brownie.
And in sixth...
Don't even need to say that.
In sixth position, we've got Turmo.
Turmo.
Glenn Miles is in 7th.
10 miles in 7th.
Lee Sanford is in
Lee
8th.
Sanford.
Followed by Damien.
Damien.
Brian Walsh is in 10th.
Walsh.
Mike Coulston 11th.
Brian Coulston.
And Cracker in 12th.
Cracker. So I told you that would go well. Did I get the first 3 right?
Well, you got the first 3, but you were pretty hopeless after that, so you should probably walk outside and talk to those meth addicts over there. Just figure...
Right. She's a Smurf! She's a Smurf!
And apparently it's a Smurf. As
women are people, man. I'll put whatever else his eyes are.
So, forming up onto the grid.
Yeah, a little bit messy there for Sando getting on the grid, but it looks like it's sorted.
So right on board Cracker, right at the back of the field, just so it can see the lights. And there's 1 light, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we are away. Cracker's not gone anywhere, but Brendan Ross has got a great start, as has Bolger, so that moves Whitmore down to P3, and possibly he might even drop down to P5. It's been that bad of a start. In fact, I believe that's, who's that? That's Turbo, I think. Yep, Turbo having a look right up the inside. But Brendan Ross gets a little bit of a nudge, I believe, from Bolger, but it is Ross from Bolger from Brownie, Turmo. Glenn Miles has been P5, Cracker P6, Walsh P7, Sanford 8th, Whitmore's dropped to 9th, Demayan is in 10th, Coulston 11th, and Gary Neville 12th. I did hear...
And just sorry, cut across there, Lewis. Just following up, we do have some drinking fountains, as it turns out, just near the basketball courts, and our good friend who hasn't made a shot yet did in fact have a drink.
Indeed, as Brian Walsh there having a spin in the background, so he's spun at the bottom of that staircase section, and that's dropped him now to the back of the field. But Brendan Ross has stretched his lead out a little bit over Bolger, and Brownie and Turmo having a nice little battle there for third. Miles
rather fittingly, as you said that Brian Walsh had spun somewhere near some staircase section, I've spotted a spiral staircase.
I dare you to walk up it, as Mike Coulston and Demayan side by side into turn 1. Coulston...
I don't walk upstairs.
Walk upstairs. So, sounds like... we've got a spinner. It's Sanford, and who is that? That is... I didn't see... It's Whitmore. So let's just see what's happened here. Right on board Whitmore into turn 1.
Oh, he's moving.
So he's having a look up the inside.
Whitmore?
Yeah, Whitmore having a look up the inside of Sanford. Sanford turned in early there. I don't know if he lost it on the braking or if he just turned into him there, but that was a bit naughty. And obviously...
Could be a little column A and a little column B with these cars.
Could be, and Whitmore is around again, so what has happened there? So he's side by side with... I can't work out who that is. But either way, he got past him and then ran wide at the staircase and then onto the grass and then off from the spin. So he's had an absolute shocker so far. Starting on pole, got a poor start, and he's now in last place. While Brendan Ross leads, he's got 0.8 of a second over Steve Bolger, who sets the fastest lap of the race, a 1 minute 14.7 compared to a 1 minute 15.1 of Brendan Ross. And behind them, Turmo drifts at turn 1 and then spins around, so there's another one off as a Cracker up the inside of Glenn Miles for P5, but that dropped obviously both of them down for dropped Glenn Miles down to P6 for a moment, but he got past Turmo, who had just spun, so Glenn Miles maintains his position, and Cracker, he's up 8 spots. Obviously, he didn't set a qualifying time, and he's had a nice clean start, made some nice overtakes, and he finds himself in P4 as Brownie from P3's had a spin of his own. What has he done here? As Scruff fidgets with something in the car due to his extreme boredom.
So I opened the glove box and then it started slightly and it scared the shit out of me. Now I'm just going through it.
Well, there you go. Alright, so what has Brownie done? Oh, he's got in too hot at the hairpin and his rear left has got onto the grass. He did a half spin there. And at the front, 14.8 for Bolger, 15.1 for Ross. So Bolger now, gap is half a second. And we're on lap 4 of 16.
Lap 4 already, it's just flown by. It's almost as though I'm not sitting in a car wishing I wasn't in the city.
Or perhaps you should just get the keys and just drive home.
I'm not sure that would be legal. Who's this? Who's the shoes on?
Alright, so we've got Coulston battling with Brian Walsh. Looks like Coulston having a look up the inside. There's yellow flags out at turn 1. There's smoke in front of Whitmore. Whitmore who'd gone off at the final turn, so let's see who it was.
Scruff out.
Oh, so Demayan losing it under braking at turn 1. Lee Sanford avoiding it, but obviously cost Demayan a lot of time, and now he's got Whitmore right behind him. And the battle for the lead as Ross gets a little bit sideways coming out of the final turn there. And the gap between Bolger and Ross, about 0.3 of a second now. Bolger, once again, fastest lap of the race. And Ross picked up his pace but with a 14.9, but still a little bit slower than Bolger at this stage. And And Cracker now in P3 as Turmo and Brownie battle it out. Ooh, a little bit of contact into turn 1 there with Turmo clipping the rear left as he runs wide and just runs the outside tyres on the exit. Yeah, just onto the grass. Very easy to spin these things. He just held on. He's sort of drifting it through the staircase once again as Brownie goes round, and that will drop Brownie behind Gary Neville. And Glenn Miles might pick. Yes, Glenn Miles will pick up that position as well, I'd assume. As no, he doesn't. Brownie cut across the grass there, so he'll hold on to that position for now. So these drivers are struggling quite a bit at the moment. Well, everybody but Ross and Bolger, who continue to battle at the front. At gap under 3/10 now, but still, Bolger can't find a way past Brendan Ross. He has a little bit of a look at turn 1, but he's nowhere near close enough. So right on board the Formula trainer of Steve, looking over his left shoulder. So Ross a little bit wide there. It's going to compromise him for the flip back, and there's Bolger right there, but he can't do anything about it because there's no straight afterwards. Probably the closest we've seen so far, but he runs a little bit wide, and that compromises him coming into the left-hand kink. So if he's going to get it done, he's going to have to get a nice run through here. It's both of them sliding all 4 tyres, but this time on the exit of the final turn, Ross lost the back end, and in fact that probably saved him a little bit actually, losing the back end because of balked Bolger, and that's in fact given him a couple of car lengths. So in some ways that slide helped Brendan Ross there, otherwise he might have found himself in P2. Coming into turn 1 as Turmo sets the fastest lap of the race. See, he's now disposed of Brownie after his spin, who's had another spin. In fact, Brownie's all the way down the field as we've got Whitmore, who's recovering side by side with Lee Sanford. Whitmore doing a 14.7, so his pace quite good at the moment, and now he's back up to P6, but he's got 8.5 seconds to Gary Neville in front and 12 seconds to Turmo down the road. That said though, he's got 9 laps to make up that time. And yellow flag's out. That's Brownie lost it at the final turn, and in fact the last couple of laps his race has absolutely disintegrated. So he's battling for potential podium place for a little while, and then in 4th place is Bolger, 14.1, so the pace is picking up as the track begins to rubber up. But Bolger, if he's going to get it done, he's had to lift there. Didn't want to push the envelope. Obviously with that kink there, that turn 2 kink is Whitmore 13.9 is it's a very unconventional line through turn 3 there for Ross. Yeah, if Bolger wants to get the pass done, he's either got to get a good run through this right-hander here, get a good exit, as he might well do here. Obviously stick behind through the left-hand kink, and then coming up to the final 2 turns, send it up the inside. He's close, but he's lifted off a little bit there. Alright, so now he's got to get this right under braking and get a good exit. Probably run a little bit wider and then turn it in and get a better exit. Yeah, he will be better served, I think. Just running a little bit wider there through the penultimate corner, setting himself up better for that final turn, and getting a better exit out, and obviously a better run into turn 1 here. So he has a look. Long way back, looks like he's just trying to pressure Ross into a mistake. And Glenn Miles, who was in front of Whitmore, must have had a spin somewhere because he's now 7 seconds behind Lee Sanford now. So he's dropped quite a bit of time. As Ross runs a little bit wide there, flicking up a bit of dirt in Steve's face. Steve's had a good run through that right-hander. Going to set him up fairly well, I'd imagine, into the final 2 turns. Pretty close this time, Steve. It's got a little bit of a slipstream. Probably want to be a metre or 2 closer. That said, he's close enough to have a go, and he's going to send it. Ross leaves the space, and Bolger will take the lead. Yes, he does. That said, though, Rossi doesn't want to give it up, but he has to yield. That kink sort of getting in his way there. And that moves Steve Bolger into the lead, but he's made a mistake through turn 3, and that's compromised him a little bit. But Ross got out of it, and for now, Steve holds on. And we've not heard from El Chief for a while. Are you alive over there? Well, he's not. So rest in peace, Scruff. Thanks for dying. That's going to put a lot more work on my shoulders. So thanks for getting yourself killed to a meth addict. There's Ross, all kinds of sideways, the penultimate corner, but it's actually set himself up well for the final turn. But looks like Bolger also got a decent exit, and he's actually pulling away a little bit, despite the slipstream from Ross. These two have got a massive 14-second gap over Cracker, who has got Turmo now, less than a second behind. And behind them, Gary Neville in 5th place. He's got a recovering Whitmore, also less than a second behind. And back in front though, Bolger still hasn't quite broken away from Ross. We'll see Ross now getting the benefit of the slipstream from Bolger in front. And he also might be picking up some tips of where to put your car and set yourself up for the circuit. So we do see that quite often, where you'll get overtaken by somebody and you'll follow them for a little bit, even though they were a bit faster. And you see their lines as we see a spinning, I believe that's Brian Walsh. It is that behind them, Turmo right behind Cracker now into the penultimate corner. Both of them very, very shallow lines there. So both of them would have lost quite a bit of time to those around them by taking that rather awkward line onto the front straight. That said, though, 14.7 from Turmo, 15.4 from Cracker. But with the line they took through the penultimate and final turn there, they could have gone a bit faster. They've got another spin. I believe someone on the grass I heard there as well. Behind them, Gary Neville holds on for now. A little bit wide in turn 1. And he's got Whitmore right behind him. So I've got 3 battles for 1st, 3rd and 5th at the moment. So Whitmore a little bit sideways there, but holds on. And Gary Neville runs wide. Outside tyres on the grass. Does well not to spin, but that allows Wayne Whitmore up into 5th place. And Whitmore, he'll be hoping that Turmo and Cracker in front continue to battle, because there's 9.5 seconds separating him, and obviously Turmo in front. As Brendan Ross sets his personal best lap, 14.232. But he's still 3/10 behind Bolger, who continues to hold on. Behind them, Cracker had a lap car to deal with. That is Damien. Damien getting out of the way, but it's allowed Turmo to close right up. And these guys have lost 1.5 seconds to Whitmore in that, well, since we last spoke about him. So obviously Damien probably didn't help, but Whitmore is driving very quickly, and these two are battling. So put them all together, and it's why Whitmore is closing in so quickly as a Turmo, almost up the back into the gearbox of Cracker there. Thankfully just pulled it up. Turmo having a look up the inside at the penultimate corner. Again, both of them taking a very awkward line. But Cracker's got a good exit, and he's just eking away from Turmo. So Turmo's probably going to have to rethink a little bit, try some different lines. Obviously, go a little bit wider through the final 2 turns there. And get a good exit down here into turn 1 if he wants to get, obviously, Cracker. Otherwise, he's going to rely on a mistake. And Cracker, he doesn't normally make too many as Turmo runs wide there and almost spins it. But he holds on for now. And then back up in front. So Ross still half a second behind. We go further down the field. Oh, and that's Whitmore around. So that's at turn 3. That's at turn 3. And, well, I was going to say Gary Neville go past, but he's outbroken himself and he's gone off. And, he's sort of blocked Whitmore there. And looks like Gary Neville's going to let him back past. And that's allowed Sanford to close in. I thought I saw Coulston and Miles or Walsh battling there for a while, but something's happened there. So, we've had Turmo has found his way up into P3, so it looks like a mistake. So the commentator's curse has struck as Cracker has a spin. Yep, too hard under braking. And didn't straighten up the steering wheel in the mid corner, and around he goes. And that drops Cracker down into P4. Turmo now into the podium position, and we see that'll allow Whitmore. Well, Whitmore probably would have been close to taking that position away from Cracker, but obviously on the previous lap, Whitmore having a spin of his own. So that sort of kills off most of the battles, although we do have Neville and Whitmore close together. But I do expect Whitmore to break away a little bit. But at the front, though, Ross and Bolger, they've been inseparable since the start of the race. Neither has really made a mistake, and they're just about to begin their final lap. But they've got 2 cars to deal with, 2-lap cars. So hopefully they get out of the way, and hopefully we have a grandstand finish as Ross closes in under braking. In fact, he has to get right on the anchors. There's Bolger nice and conservative. I believe that is Brownie off the top of my head in front of him. I believe he's in one of the yellow and black machines. Oh, and well, he spun as Whitmore sets the fastest lap of the race, but he's got 13 seconds to Turmo in front, so he's going to get him by as Bolger goes a little bit defensive. Ooh, Ross very, very aggressive there. Probably cost himself in the end, with Bolger going slow at the apex in the middle of the corner, so it held Ross up a little bit. So he couldn't accelerate away, so good racecraft, but Ross has got a good run through the kink. Bolger goes defensive, and Ross is going to try and go around the outside, loses it under braking, and he gives Bolger a little bit of a tap, but Bolger is okay, but that drops Ross down, so Bolger will hold on. He and Ross had a titanic scrap throughout the race, and Steve Bolger, a deserved winner. Ross also had a fantastic race, couldn't quite pull it out in the end, couldn't quite hold on when he had the lead, but still a fantastic P2 for him. And Turmo obviously didn't have the greatest start to the race, but he battled his way back onto the podium, and Whitmore He's going to finish P4 as Brownie having another spin there. So Whitmore will be very, very frustrated. Obviously, starting on pole, had an absolute shocker of a start. Obviously, had contact with Sanford, I should say, and that dropped him further down the field. But still, good effort to work his way back up to P4, but he'll be frustrated with obviously that start dropping him into the field. And then Gary Neville, solid P5, but again, a couple mistakes costing him possibly a place or two in the end. But still, decent points for him. Cracker, P6, he'll be frustrated. Obviously, he was in P3, just in front of Turmo, but couldn't quite hold on with obviously that spin there, the right-hander in the middle sector. And then Lee Sanford, P7, obviously that incident with Whitmore early on, and then a spin here or there, and that obviously dropped him down the field a little bit. So he finished P7. Glenn Miles he was running 5th and 6th in the early part of the race, but a spin that we didn't see on camera dropped him down the field a little bit still. Nice solid race from him. And Mike Coulston, P9. Brian Walsh, P10. Demayan, P11. And Brownie in 12th. Alright, so there will be a qualifying session coming up shortly, but we shall take a short break. Alright, and welcome back to qualifying for the second race here at Virginia International Raceway on the South Circuit. And we've been joined by an extra commentator. Rhodey has joined us from the comment section on Facebook, and he'll be giving me a hand here in the commentary box.
Yeah, thanks for letting me jump in, Lewis, to give you a hand. Yeah, I thought it was better than me sitting in YouTube making shitty puns. Yeah, so I come from the land of ARW when I commentate there, the Caterham series. It's good to broaden the palette though a little bit.
Yep, and I do believe you have a little bit of a history with these Formula trainers, which, well, they are Formula Fords, pretty much.
Yeah, they are pretty much. Yeah, running Avons, I think they're running, which is the old tyre that the Victorian and the National Formula Fords used to run before they moved to Yokohama's. Yeah, I came out and actually tested these a couple of sessions across the week, and in real life, I've got a couple of mates to drive them, and I've done plenty of spectating and photographing of them in action.
Yep, they're a very interesting car to drive, that's for sure. Very, very twitchy. You've got to have one input of either brake or throttle, and as you said, in the brake, you've got to slide them around just a little bit just to get the maximum out of them.
Yeah, you do. There's just something that seems to be a generic thing with a lot of open wheelers. The Formula Rookies, also known in real life as Formula Vs, are similar as well. You've got to slide them just a little bit to get them. They are very twitchy wheelbases, so you slide them too far. Again, if you're trying to drift an F1 car, you are going to spin it. But you got to really walk that fine line between sideways and quick and sideways and doing a pirouette, which the latter is not very quick at all.
Yes, a few of these guys have found the hard way, especially around this circuit, that the pirouette isn't the fastest way. And we're just about to get qualifying, well, our first time lapse underway with Termo, I believe, will be the first one to start a time lap. See,
he's heading up now to Termo. This is a long straight. We had these in the Caterhams as well. It's a long straight, and you got to have a chance to get these Formula Fords right up to the top end of their fourth gear gearbox.
Yeah, and it's a very difficult sort of braking zone, obviously. You haven't got too much to sort of gauge on the left-hand side, and obviously it is uphill, and then the track falls away through the turn as well.
Yeah, what's a real pain in the arse I found is this section here. It's almost corkscrew-esque in the just the nature of the corner. It's the downhill left is just a pain. The whole track rolls away from you. It's a negative camber corner. The whole thing is conspiring to send you off the track, combined with a braking point which is just over the crest, and so it's pretty blind to work with. And I think 8 out of 10 laps I did around here, on average, I went flying off either on the inside or the outside. It's that last sector is a little tricky. Same as this one. You get a little sideways on the curb, and it's all over Red Rover. Yeah,
the curbs, especially this part of the track, are pretty steep, as we see Termo go through the penultimate and final corner there. Once again, very, very shallow entry, and is costing him, I'd say, at least 0.3 of a second. That said, though, he does improve on what he set in the first qualifying session. This time he sets a 1 minute 15.2. I believe in the first qualifying session he set a 1 minute 16. So pretty vast improvement on his part. And Mike Coulston goes P2 on a 15.9, and Brownie does a 16.1.
Yeah, that was a big flurry of cars there putting down their time. There's Cracker in fourth, but that's probably not the best time for Cracker there. He's a whole second off of Termo in first.
Yes, and Damien was on a lap. He's still continuing on his lap, but he's just had a spin there at it looks like the penultimate corner there. So that's going to drop him down, but he's going to complete his lap. And as we've seen, not only in this series, but also in the touring cars, it is quite valuable sometimes just completing these laps, as we see quite a number of guys obviously mess up their one and only lap.
Exactly, yeah. You want to, even if you stuff up a lap, there is a good chance, and especially as the fields get bigger in size, that somebody else is going to do the same thing. And your decision to commit to the lap, regardless of that, is going to put you above anyone who spins and decides, that's it.
Yes, certainly. So we haven't got anyone on a time lap at the moment, but Steve Bolger is closest. He's about halfway through the circuit, going through that corkscrew staircase section at the moment. And behind him, I think it's Brian Walsh.
It is Brian Walsh behind him. Yeah, they're both getting into sort of the corkscrew staircasey section there. Heading down to the sort of second of the two big... A lot of hairpins on this track, but the sort of second of the two big ones. This one also it's a very very sort of unmarked corner entry, so it's very hard to pick a braking point. And there's a little crest in here as well. It's also a misleading corner to run through, and this place. It might just be my lack of driving ability, but this place is very easy to find yourself off the track by accident.
Yes, there's not many reference points around the circuit. There's no real braking markers or anything like that to sort of gauge where you are. So if you're not paying too much attention, you can find yourself off into the boonies, as well as you can sort of lose your bearings with obviously your lines and such.
Yeah, this track is a hard one to pick lines around, and it's a little bit because of the space you got on the track, and yeah, it was this and this, and so with the guys that were racing the Caterham series, you had a lot of trouble just picking lines through corners, and a lot of different lines were working, and it was interesting trying to pick which one was the quickest. And the full circuit here is a bugger because it's just so big, but even here, yeah, it's just a bit of a confusing track to work your way around.
Yeah, this one obviously a bit smaller, but you do have that big straight, and instead of being as fast and flowing. This shorter version, obviously, a lot more technical and a lot obviously shorter and sharper turns. As we've got Bolger up by considerable margin in the first split and up by 7/10 in the second. So this will see, barring mistake, a 1:14. But he'll be hoping for. Sorry,
just trying to flip through to where is he? There he is. There's Steve. Yeah. Yeah, there was a good couple of first two sectors. I was looking at Lee Sanford, who's exiting the second hairpin now. He was 1/10 up in that first sector as well, so it'll be interesting to see where he sits.
And that's a fantastic final sector from Bolger. He found his further 7/10, and his line through the penultimate and final turn was quite exceptional, and that found him quite a bit of time. So a 13.7 from Bolger, and that's going to be a pretty difficult time to match. But obviously we have seen Whitmore set some impressive times himself. But this is when it matters. But that said, he's up almost 0.3 of a second in the middle sector, so we should see that time get beaten.
Yeah, I believe Sanford was seeming to have some troubles there. He went from 1/10 up in the first sector, 0.6 down the second, and 1.2 seconds down on the pole time at the end there. I know that part of that was Bolger coming and setting a good time, but. Yeah, I think he might be having some issues with some of the more technical sections of this track.
That said, though, still not too bad a lap time, but Wayne Whitmore, see, he set an exceptional lap there. His final sector, again, very strong. He found a couple more tenths on Stuyve. And now Whitmore up into pole position.
Yeah, that was a great lap from Wayne. Put another nearly a half a second up on Bolger's time.
His first sector, looking at live races, is what did it really. Obviously, he was about half a tenth faster in the middle sector and about a tenth faster in the final sector. But that first sector, he was 2/10 faster, so that set him up beautifully, and he continued that out through the rest of the lap.
Yeah, there's not a lot to this first sector. It's really just 2/3 of the front straight and the braking zone down to the hairpin. But it's all about picking that braking zone down to the hairpin and getting an exit out of that hairpin onto the next sort of short straight. That's where you're gaining all your speed from it. And you push yourself, 10 meters later in the braking zone and you get stopped perfectly. You're still getting time there because you're maximising your time spent at the top speed.
Yeah, just looking at Gary Neville at the moment, he's struggling a little bit. He's run wide and off the track a couple times at the moment, but he's looking to set a lap time.
Yeah, Gary Neville coming now through the last corner, a little wide on the corner there, and was lucky he had a bit of angle coming onto the curb, and that curb, I've seen it in other series trip a lot of cars up, so was lucky to keep it over a spin. But yeah, that was a decent lap from Gary Neville there.
Not too bad. Obviously, he made a mistake, but he kept with it, and he finds himself in 10th place. We've got Brendan Ross now. Obviously, he finished second in the first race. He's currently on a lap. His first sector, not too bad. He was in touching distance of Stuyve. But that middle sector, though, he's dropped a little bit of time, though.
Yeah, he's dropped down to now half a second behind Whitmore, which puts him provisional third at the moment. I'll be interested to see if he's managed to pick up the time in the final sector. He could still bring himself up to second, or he could find some amazing time and bring himself up to first, but he's gone even further backwards now, sitting in... he actually kept it in third there with the gap back to Lee Sanford being big enough that he could slot in.
Yeah, he did drop 0.4 of a second in the final split, so we did ride on board with Bolger and Whitmore through that final 2 turns. Obviously, you do need a bit of commitment through that left-hand kink before that, but a lot of time for a lot of the drivers can be found in that braking zone as well as setting yourself up at that final turn.
Yeah, those last couple of corners, there was a name for that sector which we put up on the catering stream, and I can't remember what it is for the life of me. I couldn't even remember it was during the catering stream. But yeah, that's the first corner's a bit of a bugger because it's at the end of one of the 2 big braking zones on the track, and just with the elevation change in the area and the curbs and whatnot, it's very easy to stuff up your line through there. And the problem is that corner also really sets you up for the second corner. That can be improved and made best upon its own rights, but you have to get a good line through the first of those 2 to get a good line through the second, which then sets you up for the long straight. So really, that's really the last sector, and that's not only sets you up good for that lap, but it'll also set you up quite a lot for if that is your warm-up lap for your actual qualifying lap.
Yeah, I think that's probably where Whitmore probably found actually a lot of that time in that first sector is that we did see on his flying lap, his run through the obviously penultimate and final turns, he was quite quick. So if he managed to do that also, obviously on his out lap, that's probably given him at least a tenth and a half down that straight to, and that's even before he's even started his lap. So every little bit on this circuit, especially with a long straight and in these cars which don't have too much power, those little things do obviously work out being quite a lot of lap time.
Yeah, exactly. So by getting that line through that last corner sort of done properly, he's managed to get himself onto the throttle sooner. And these cars, again, with such low power, they don't weigh a lot, but just low power in general means they struggle to sort of get to speed. And the sooner you can get to full throttle, the better. And that's what's given him so much time, consequently, to that first sector.
Yeah, he was obviously what I noticed when we were riding on board with him is that he had that little bit of a slide going on, but it was a controllable one, and he had the throttle on, pushing himself through the corner, while others, even though they are driving it correctly for, say, a different car, like a Formula 1 car or a more powerful supercar or the like, in this, if you do obviously lean on him a little bit more, especially coming out of a corner like that, it does give you quite a bit of a bonus on the exit and obviously down straights like that. While if you do drive it a little bit straighter, it can sometimes, obviously, you'll get a nice run, but you're not going to quite get that extra 1 or 2 Ks, which in these cars is quite a lot.
Yeah, the difference is these cars are low grip cars, and therefore driving them at full grip isn't always the best option. Stuff like a GT car or an F1 car, like you were saying, you've got mountains of grip to work with relative to these things. So the only way to be fast is to actually fully utilize those tires. Fully utilizing the tires in the thing gets you to a degree of speed, but you really need to push the envelope of using a bit of that sidewall too, and just getting the tires to roll a little bit to get the speed out of them. But as I said earlier, it's such a fine line balancing act, and it's so easy to go past that and spin it. So in the actual in the real racing, and it'd be good to see someone in here like our own Andy Simpson to tell us about it. But it's unless you really know what you're doing, you can't really just step into a Formula Ford and get it immediately to the top with that sort of sideways cornering effort like a lot of them do. It takes a year, 2 years, possibly even more depending on how long it takes you to actually learn that to get the driving style to a point where you are extracting the full speed from the tires in the car.
It certainly doesn't. Obviously, with these tyres in particular being grooved, you sort of do have to rely on, obviously, the sidewalls just a little bit to give yourself that extra grip. While if you're running with slick tyres, which the advanced version of these cars have, you don't need to obviously rely as much on obviously using all the available tyre grip and that little bit extra.
Yeah, I'm actually curious on. It is actually based on. I would assume the Formula trainers are based on the Brazilian version of Formula Ford, but I'm interested in why they run full slick tires. The advantage in real life for Formula Ford running the groove tires, as they do in the States and the National Series in Victoria and Australia, respectively, is the cost is down for a start. The other advantage is you can run these as all-weather tires. You start bolting slicks on, and then you have to do tire changes in Formula Ford, which I think they use 4-nut or 5-nut hubs. So tire change during a race wouldn't be too ideal. So it's interesting that they use slicks. I suppose it gives them a transition point to go into something like Formula 3, which is slicks and wings. So you go halfway there, get your slicks, then you upgrade a little further and then start to deal with aero. But yeah, from my experience, it's interesting to put slicks onto a Formula Ford.
Well, obviously the trainers, or the advanced trainers in these, they also have an added power as well, which can make them fun, but they can make them quite deadly as well. So for those that are interested and have driven these, obviously trainers just with the groove tyres, maybe do a lap or two in the ones with the slicks, and you'll find that they're almost light years apart just in terms of grip and power.
Yeah, I think I don't know whether they're probably not far off. I think they're 2-liter engines in that, so they're not far off what you find actually in some market Formula 3s. So whether the idea is just to give you a wingless Formula 3 to make the progression of Formula 3 that little bit easier and just adding an extra stepping stone in there, but yeah, I've driven these things, and these things are enough of a handful. So it'd be interesting to try the improved versions, the advanced versions, as such, and see whether different is a bit better grip, but with more power, you've got more low engine torque to deal with. And these things, even with slick tires, they've still got the same relatively skinny tires, so there's not a lot of grip off the line. So, but yeah, I agree. I reckon if you've had these things and you've had a bit of fun with them, try the advanced versions. You get some more grip, more power, and a bit more of a challenge.
They certainly are more of a challenge. I personally sort of prefer these lesser powered ones. If I was going to go up to anything a little bit more powerful and open wheel, I would just jump in the F3. But these things, obviously the reason why I chose them is they're a bit of fun to drive, but you also need to think, and they also teach you little things that can be quite helpful, obviously, when you move to other series, especially with the braking and acceleration, obviously the transition between the two. Drivers are taught to pretty much as soon as they're either on the throttle and they need to brake, is that there's no transition. It's just one flows into the other. While obviously in sim racing, there's you have a few drivers that will be on the accelerator coming to a braking zone, and there'll be a bit of a gap between obviously the foot off the accelerator and then onto the brake, as well as obviously in the mid corner as well.
Yeah, these cars, and that's where the name Formula Trainer comes from, is that these things are real life used and intended as a stepping stone into a lot of bigger series. And yeah, they do treat you a lot of stuff from anything like driving, like an XL would be a good example within the Victorian State Series and nationally. That's touring car racing in its basic form. It uses road car suspension or modified road car suspension, modified road car stuff. So it's a very sloppy car, I suppose, and it forgives mistakes, and you can sort of throw one around and have a bit of fun. These things are more like an open wheels in general, and sort of the high level open wheels, high level race cars. They're that highly strung that they don't you punish them and they'll punish you back twice as hard. So yeah, that's I suppose why they've just given them the name Formula Trainer, because that's what they're intended to do in real life, is to train you up for everything above this.
Yeah, they do teach. We see some drivers do find themselves, obviously they do like to wring the neck, obviously, of whatever car they're driving. And in these things, you can do that to a certain point. But if that's your driving style and you jump in these things straight away and you want to drive like that, you'll find yourself spinning more often than not, as you do have to give them quite a bit of finesse. And
gee, that was Brenton Ross talking about giving it finesse. He gave it a massive slide through, what is that, turn 3, the sort of the downhill left of the left, right, left, and nearly pulled it off, but lack of steering lock there. He just about caught it, but then sent it off the infield in the middle of turn 4. But yeah, back to the point you're making.
Yeah, I sort of lost my thought there, but just having a look at the replay, yeah, just got in a little bit too hot there, and once the track fell away a bit, he gassed it up, and there he goes pirouetting around. Nice little save, and keeps going.
Yeah, he's actually setting the best times out there, but the times are a little closer across the warm-up. It's interesting to compare this to the Caterham Series warm-up over on Apex Rear Wing, where a lot of things are practiced in the warm-up. There are warm-ups actually used for practice starts that more than often find cars going 3 and 4 wide. You would notice actually you actually raced early in the season, but it's a lot of 3 and 4 wide starts and quite a lot of horn use as well.
Yes, if there is obviously a car that does have a horn, especially in those Wednesday night series, that they will be abused quite a lot in practice, and it has been heard in qualifying as well as the warm-up.
I still have my horn button mapped.
And Scruff has not been murdered by a meth dealer. So, welcome back, Scruff. It's nice to know that you're alive.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
And you sound much better. Are you home?
Yes. I'm still incredibly bored too.
So
It's
nothing.
residual boredom.
Indeed.
Quite. Hello, what's going on? How many races have we had?
We've only had the one race so far.
Blimey.
I only had the one race, but we've now got Rhodey in here helping us commentate. So that's good helping hand. After you died.
Yeah.
I didn't die. You seen meth? Oh. I was going to say something horrible, but then I remembered I probably shouldn't. My vacation's over, so I can't get away with insulting everyone.
Laughing time is over.
Remember my vacation? That was great. Let's talk about that.
Nah.
No, I didn't do anything. I literally did nothing.
Well, it looks like Brendan Ross practiced his start, although after his race 1 shenanigans, he doesn't really need to practice his start. If there's anybody that does, it's Wayne Whitmore, and he hasn't left the pits as far as I know. So,
How did the rest of his race go?
well, for the first 5 laps, it didn't go very well, but
I recall he was pointing the wrong way a lot.
yes, but he did fight back and eventually finished 4th. So, not a bad result for him in the end. We do have also Steve Bolger practicing a start.
Mike Coulston, that was a solid start to his exit. He managed to spin on a pit exit, which that's a new thing. I've seen that only similar stuff one time in the State Series. I had a mate in Formula V's who waited until the 4th corner on the opening lap of qualifying to fence it at Sandown.
I think I've seen you get stuck on a cone in a pit exit before, Rhodey.
Yeah, actually, I might have. I think high karting, I've done a couple of things. I think cone was one of the things I've been stuck on before. I thought you were talking about the Formula V's, but yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about. I bent more than a cone there.
Lewis knows all about doing cones.
I've never had a cone in my life, mate.
You are fucking Bob Marley, Rink. I've been here for 13 seconds and I already said fuck and accused you of being a pothead. Back to service as usual, people.
Welcome.
My food ready yet?
No, it's not.
Oh, fuck.
Well, it's just ticked over. Well, it's not ticked over, but time has expired in the second warm-up session. Brendan Ross fastest, with Steve Bolger second fastest. So hopefully everybody makes it back onto the grid.
Yeah, pretty healthy grid of 12 cars. I think Catering Series averages that. No, we don't even average that. Actually, we're slightly less than that. But yeah, it's a little down on what you see in an actual Formula Ford field, but this is so a little hard to get into in a way. But that was an entirely useless train of thought. I'll bounce back to you for something useful.
Fair enough, but
The top 3 is the same as it was in race 1. What are the odds?
pretty slim.
I would have said they're fairly good.
Nah, that was never going to happen.
Fair enough.
Alright, so another 5 or so seconds before the formation lap begins.
No one looking patient at all. A few cars already rolling balls, and we are off as Rossi vanishes and reappears as if by magic.
So, considering that you couldn't get through the field last time out, but you do know the first 3, why don't you go through the grid for us, Scruff?
I'm all over this, Lewis. In first position, we have Wayne Whitmore. Second place, we do not have Demine because I've hit the wrong button as usual. We have Steve Bolger in second. Third place is Brendan Ross in the John Reed #1 car. Fourth is Lee Sanford, a significant improvement from memory over his qualifying for race 1. Fifth place is Termo. Sixth is Mike Coulston. Seventh place we have Brownie. Cracker in 8th after actually setting a lap this time. 9th is Brian Walsh in the Justin Timberlake entry. 10th is Glenn Miles in the Ripley's Believe It or Not car, and seriously out of place. 11th is Gary Neville And in 12th is Demayan, who is not Steve Bolger in second place.
In fact, he's not, yes.
Other than hitting the wrong button, I actually did that right.
So he did it
I'll
completely
get
wrong.
it for race 3.
We'll see about that.
Oh, I'm back with my tins now, so you got a good point there.
Well, there goes any coherent thoughts for the third race then.
You, sir, are a racist.
Yes, that is indeed me. Anyway, we'll see Whitmore coming through the final turn right now. A little bit wide there. It keeps it on the grey stuff. He'll be hoping for a much better start this time out. Obviously, he just went absolutely nowhere at the start of race 1, and he was jumped by Rossi. He got the best start of the front 3, and
Yeah, Whitmore getting about as far as a Fallon or a lesbian bar.
indeed.
Thank you, Rhodey.
No problem.
And looks like Brendan Ross just out of position slightly. Just once again, look from the left shoulder of Demayan. So 1 light, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we are away. Looks like Rossi got another great start, and Whitmore nowhere again. And Lee Sanford looks like he got the best start of the lot, but Steve Bolger's giving him nowhere to go, defending the inside. And Rossi's going to have to go around the outside of Bolger if he wants to hold on. We had a spin at the back at his Brownie, I believe.
Shit. Sorry, that was... We had like 3 or 4 cars flying. There go. Neville flew in. Brownie. Mike Coulston was tied up in that. Glenn Miles as well.
And Cracker as well, yeah.
Off there.
And there was Cracker as well. So let's just have a look and see what happened.
A few cars colliding with each other repeatedly as well back there as they all tried to.
Oh,
get back on
okay.
track
So
in some spot.
it looks like Cracker got rear-ended by. Let's just have a look. I think it was Gary Neville, who was slightly on the grass, and then obviously Cracker had nowhere to go, and he just speared into Glenn Miles, and Neville went. Well, yeah, that was just a big one, that one. But at the front, Bolger leads. He's got 0.4 of a second over Brendan Ross. They've got 0.6 over Wayne Whitmore, but with Whitmore's pace, he'll probably be over the back of him in no time. That said, though,
As he runs off the track there.
as he lives up to the commentator's curse and drops more time. Behind him, Turmo's up 1 spot to 4th, and Lee Sanford has dropped behind him. Damien, after all the carnage at the start, he's up 6 spots from the back of the field to 6th.
Oh, bit of a lock up there for Rossi. Bit sideways. Looks like he's gathered it up quite well there, though. Hasn't lost out too much to Bolger as he puts another couple of wheels off.
They look like all 4 tyres were possibly locked up there, but that was a good job to at least get that thing stopped eventually, and hopefully those tyres aren't too flat in that. But he's still back up on the back of Bolger.
He's probably driving on 50-cent pieces, so that'll be. He's got his force feedback turned up. His arms might be shaking for a little while yet. And now he's got Whitmore for company, and Bolger sort of stretched away just a little bit because of that.
Yeah, Wayne Whitmore doing a good job to recover from his...
I'm sorry. It's Wayne Whitmore.
Sorry, Wayne. I'm going to get that right.
Wayne.
Wayne. No, I'm going to get entirely wrong.
And
You already are getting it wrong.
I'll just say Whitmore because that at least is correct. Whitmore was back up on the back of Brendan Ross there. A good recovery drive after his second tardy start. I'm not sure what it is. These cars are tricky to start again with the lack of rear tyre, but I don't know whether that's causing an issue or there's something on his setup. But good recovery. He's now pressuring Brendan Rossi for the first corner.
Yeah, Ross has made a couple of mistakes towards the end of that lap, and that dropped him further behind Bolger, and Whitmore now right on his gearbox and looking quite menacing.
A good line through those couple of corners. It's Steve Bolger still managed to drive away at the front. This battling, even though there's not too much participation in it from Brendan Ross. That's Wayne Whitmore around in the background.
Yeah, so just ran a little bit wide there, and his rear left just clipped the grass as he was accelerating. and as all the load was on that tyre, that sent him around. So Ross gets he'll have a big sigh of relief from that one, as Whitmore, he had quite a bit of pace, obviously in both the qualifying sessions and in the first race, but that spin certainly helps him out, as Lee Sanford. Yeah, Lee Sanford has had a spin there. So
yeah, that was. I think that was possibly came through the fast over there and just got the car out of control, and then trying to catch it, got a tank slapper and went flying off. That's a weird spot to send your car off.
Yeah, he got a little bit sideways through that left-hand kink, and instead of just gunning it on the throttle, he lifted off, which is the worst thing you could do in these cars, and it just spun around on him. So he did graze the wall a little bit as we cut back to Bolger. He runs a little bit sideways there, but behind him, Ross cuts across the grass and actually gained quite a bit of time doing that, but he probably won't want to take turn 3 like that too often, otherwise he'll find himself backwards.
Yeah, speaking of sideways, Termo, who's sitting just behind them now in third after Wayne's spin. Yeah, he got a full Tokyo drift through turn 3, and unlike whoever it was we mentioned on the warm-up, he actually got it done pretty perfectly. Plus, he got some speed out of that, that's the way to do it, is just a little bit of sideways. So, Termo getting the grips with these cars.
Yeah, he's had a pretty solid season so far, and his form in the touring cars has also improved of late as well. So he's doing a pretty solid job, as Steve Bolger is the first man into the 1 minute 13s. And behind him, Ross actually got a track cut from cutting the grass. As we look at Whitmore, he's got a great exit out of the final corner, and he's going to try and go around the outside, and will go around the outside down the main straight of Damien. And Damien, once again, he's up another spot as well after Sanford having that spin. So Damien's had a great start, and after starting at the back, finds himself in a P5. And Brian Walsh, he's also up 3 spots, and he's actually got a little bit of pace on Damien in front. So good little battle here, building for 5th place as well.
Yeah, I think he recognised Whitmore had the speed earlier. It might have been best to just let him go. And Damien is up 7 spots already, so that's a great recovery from his qualifying misfortunes. But he's got a battle in his hands now. There is Brian Walsh just behind him, and Lee Sanford's recovering from his spin, and looks like he's ready to join the fray as well.
Yes, and just looking at the sector splits at the moment, Whitmore's at the fastest first sector. Ross has got a purple middle sector, and Whitmore wasn't too far off that either, so we probably will see. We have got a fastest lap, Brendan Ross there, as you can see on your screen, 13.6, but it wouldn't surprise me if Whitmore goes on and even breaks that by a 10th or 2. And there it is.
Yep, that's another 3 tenths up. It's now with 1:13.3. So yeah, Wayne Whitmore's coming, but we've only got 10 laps left here, and he's currently 14 seconds off the leader. So he's the quickest, but I'm not sure he's quickest enough to bring himself back up to the battle for the podium.
Brendan Ross just getting back up to Bolger, was a couple tenths off the back of him, and then went off track again. Still around a second off the back of Bolger, but definitely not making life easy for himself.
It certainly isn't. It's been a story of his season, really. Even though he has had decent results, he's could have had a lot better results throughout the season, but he's made a couple uncharacteristic mistakes. So these cars don't quite sit with him as well as what last year's minis do. That said, though, he's in a good position right now, and he certainly looks faster than Bolger at the moment.
Yeah, and I mean, that's all he needs to do at this point is, just sit there and pressure Bolger. It's especially with this series having some of the less experienced drivers. I'm not going to criticise them. I'm least experienced in the entirety of this field.
Criticise away.
No, I'll leave that for you, Scruff. With some of the lesser experience across this field, it's a lot easier, I suppose, to sit behind someone and push them into making a mistake just from the pressure, just from filling their rearview mirrors. Slipstream doesn't make such a benefit in these cars. It's in other cars it helps to be, or in other tracks it helps to be getting second if you want to win a race sort of towards the final laps, because you can get someone over the line with the slipstream. But there's not a lot of the back straight isn't really a straight here, and the front straight from the exit to the final corner of the line is so short that you can't, unless you ride up someone's gearbox, you're not going to get the speed slingshot off them to get a get a win off them in that last little sector. But as long as Brendan Ross can keep himself on the back, he's going to have a couple of tenths. And
sorry to cut you off there, but Bolger had a big moment coming through the final corner, sort of lost it under braking, and that's allowed Brendan Ross right up alongside him, and Ross will take the lead. So it was around about this time in the first race that Bolger got past Ross, and now Ross has got his own on Bolger, who made that mistake there in the final corner. And Whitmore down in fourth. He'll be hoping that this continues for quite a few laps, so he has the chance of perhaps closing up on the back of these guys. But there still is 8 laps to go. And even though we only say it's 8, I think something that we've found out is even though we have a small amount of laps in each of these races, they actually seem like quite a long time with the number of mistakes that drivers have tended to make so far in this series.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that you sit there and you watch race, and it's one of the things I suppose doing your involvement in level of racing. I've sat there and I've watched racing, and it's interesting that racing actually it seems to get almost I find racing's longer. Racing is really longer when you're busy. If you're in there spectating a race, it takes some time. If you're commentating, it's a little quicker. And if you're driving in the race, it goes all too quickly. And when you're spending in real life $800 a weekend, it feels way too quick for the money you're spending. Yeah,
plus obviously in real life you don't get as much track time as what you do obviously when you're in a sim. You obviously pay for all that money to get out onto the circuit, and you only get half an hour or an hour of practice, and then you're chucked into obviously qualifying and heats and such.
Yeah, it's. I'm not going to jump and criticise the State Series either because it's great for what they offer. But compared to this, the State Series gives you 3 races between 8 laps and 12 laps, depending on the track and depending on how the format goes. We're getting 3 16-lap races here, so this is. I think if Andy Simpson were to come join us, he'd probably get through the first 10 laps and then wonder what to do because normally he'd be pitting at that point.
I will say that in real racing, it's one of the worst things you can do is be in the lead, because if you especially if you start from pole and just having a good night, you get to the halfway point, and I've many times wound up looking around the track trying to find something to watch because you're just going, all right, I've got to do this for another 20 minutes and I'm bored and want to go to sleep. It's actually probably one of the most difficult things you can do in racing is lead the whole way through. You want to be in a bit more of a battle and have something to focus on rather than sort of just watching the lap counter come down.
Yeah, it's if you're leading or in general just if you're stuck with no one to battle with, racing gets extremely painful if you're just sitting there doing pretty much nothing, just circulating. It's fun circulating, but you get 5-10 laps and you're just like, okay, well now what? But back to the actual racing, a couple of guys are circulating by themselves actually. Wayne Whitmore is making the gap up, but he's by himself.
He had Bolger set the fastest lap, and he had a little bit of a go into turn 1. It looked like he got caught out by Brendan Ross braking, and they made a little bit of contact into turn 1, and that's dropped Bolger now 1.1 behind Ross, but that did cost him about 1.5 to 2 seconds to obviously Whitmore, and now Turmo, he's only 1.5 seconds behind Steve Bolger in second, so the gap is coming down with these two battling as hard as they are.
Yeah, exactly. With Bolger and Ross, despite the fact that Brendan and Ross are starting to run away, even with them still trying to battle, it is slowing themselves down, which is bringing player 3 and Turmo into the action. And Turmo he's chucking this car into a couple of corners now. I've just seen. So he's got a good grip on the grip in these cars, and we could have a three-car battle for the lead here, and it's good timing because we're getting not far off the final sector of this race.
Well, Turmo just said his fastest lap, that he's done around this track, just said a 13.7, so he's going quite nicely. But
Coulston's had a problem.
And Mike Coulston has had a problem.
I think the leaders are just going past. Yeah, leaders just gone past him, and he was off the track letting them go. As I have a mouthful of chicken things.
But further up through the field from Mike Coulston, Ryan Walsh is having a pretty solid race. He's up 3 spots from the start, and he and Sanford are having a little bit of a battle at the moment as well. So Ryan Walsh doing a solid job. Obviously, he did a great job at Johannesburg in the first race, I believe, getting on the podium. And he's continuing that decent form so far. But further up, looks like Turmo, he was pretty close to Steve, but looks like he's dropped off. He might have made a mistake somewhere. Because that
I think I think what we're finding is different driving styles are benefiting in different places. Talk about the Caterhams again. We have a couple of drivers that are very clean, precise drivers. Xeris being one of them. Brenton Foley, I think, Brenton Foley is the other one. Xeris is one of the guys who will hit every apex and keep the car perfectly straight. Brenton Foley will get it sideways pretty much every chance he can get. And across the two, across a race where you've got an even balance of technical stuff and fast corners, they even out. I think what we're finding is similar stuff here where Turmo's driving style more suits the high-speed corners where he can throw a little bit of a slide in, and he's got the space to work with. But through the middle sector, it's really sort of narrow and twisty, and Turmo has to race it sort of on the line, sort of on the rails, and it's something that he's struggling to do more so than, racing with a bit of flair, as we see him getting a little more sideways there again. So through middle sector, he's losing out, but he's through some of the faster corners, which are kinks. He's throwing it in 10/10, and he's building the pace back up there.
Yeah, and going back to that battle for 5th place,
Someone's off.
Brian Walsh has forced Lee Sanford into a mistake, and Brian Walsh is now up 4 spots and finds himself in P5. So he's doing pretty well at the moment. But he's now...
Glenn Miles has issues as well. He's now behind Coulston. Both of them are a lap down in the first 3 or 4.
Yeah, Miles had just spun, I think, just as the leads were coming past him. I was watching him earlier, about to go a lap down, and he was the one that spun off as the leaders were coming. So whether he was keeping on his mirrors or the blue flag sort of got into his mentality a little bit. But Miles spun, and now he's also a lap down in the rest of the field.
And a little bit further down the field as well, I've got the commentator's nightmare as Cracker and Brownie were battling, both being in the same car, but Brownie's had a spin, and that's allowed Cracker now up into P7. And Brownie's going to have to rejoin the track, and he drops another spot to Damien in 8th.
Oh, speaking of spinning, Sanford had a spin there as well on the final corner. I think he possibly lit it up a little bit on the curb and spun it. But that's given Brian Walsh a whole bunch of clean air to work with now.
Yeah, that's where he spun earlier to allow Brian Walsh through. So Lee Sanford struggling quite a bit there through the obviously penultimate and final turn. Up at the front though, Brendan Ross still leads. They're coming across. That must be Gary Neville, I think. It looks like he's letting them through. Yep, he's just gone a lap down, and the gap now between Ross and Bolger, 0.6 of a second. Bolger's just edged away a little bit, or it looked like he'd edged away, but I think Turmo had a decent lap that time out. Yep, he was 0.4 faster.
No, there goes Turmo. Turmo's out of that battle. He sent it a bit wide on entry turn 1 and put it in a place where he was faced with tyre barrier, so he's had to pluck reverse and get out of there, but he's now back behind Gary Neville.
And he's also dropped a position to Whitmore, and Whitmore
that was Whitmore that went past, my mistake.
And he's 7.5 seconds behind Bolger, so he'll need a little bit of...
No, sorry. Tomo's gone again. He would push 11/10 through turn 3, getting a nice slide on, but he clipped the entry curb and put it on 2 wheels nearly. And I think he's just letting out some frustration at this point.
Yeah, just overdrove it into turn 3, and obviously his tyres did have a bit of grass on them as well, which that's something I think a few drivers don't actually realise, is that you can dirty your tyres in AMS, and they do give you a little bit less grip when you drive on the grass, so that probably caught him out a little bit as well. But Bolger on this lap is closed in a little bit more again on Ross, but he's only got 2 laps to do it, as Ross moves to the centre of the track to try and break the toe. And Whitmore fastest lap with 13.0. That is the fastest lap. That is the fastest lap we've seen around this circuit. So he's going very quickly, but he's got a good 6.8 to 7 seconds to catch up in 2 laps. So barring a spin, he's probably not going to catch up to the back of these two. There's Ross fronts wide there, and it's going to allow Bolger to close right up, but there's no straight for him to capitalise on it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think Whitmore's next, and unfortunately only pass for this race, barring a spin from the leaders, is going to be Gary Neville, who's just moved across to let him through. But some great pace from Whitmore. He just fortunately was too far back when he recovered to make any use of it. But hopefully he's turned this into practice laps for qualifying for race 3, and he will bring out a stellar time for that one.
Certainly. And, well, the leaders, they're coming up to, I believe, Brownie and Damien to lap. So, a bit of traffic for these guys to deal with on the final lap, as looks like Ross had a fantastic run through the final turn there, and he's put up a little bit of time there on Steve Bolger, so the pressure's off.
Yeah, not a clean middle sector there from Steve.
Yeah, so the pressure's off Ross a little bit now, but he'll still be a little bit nervous with some overtaking with lap cars going on just in front of him.
Yeah, the pair of the John Reed cars, or the pair of the John Reed team cars there with Brennan Ross and Damien sort of running side by side, but obviously almost a lap apart. He's currently now stuck in a battle, and this is almost a 4-car battle, but it isn't, because the back two are trying to win the race, and the front two are just trying to stop getting lapped. But Damien's let him through there, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Brownie. Yep, he's done the same. So
yeah, so good driving
Brownie
from
and
both of
Damien
those
now
guys.
lapped down.
Good driving from both of those guys there, which is something I think a few of the drivers sort of struggled with when they do get lapped, is what to do, and neither of them panicked there, and they let them go when they could.
Looked on my screen a bit like Rossi may have just tapped the back of Damien and nudged him out of the way a bit, not too sure.
I don't think I saw that on my screen, but it might have been just a case of just, hey, I'm here. I mean, we both know from high karting, you've got to kind of do that to get past any traffic.
Nah, you catch Louis and he just swerves at you. Holy crap, the race is done. Rossi's done it.
Yeah, Brendan Ross holds on in the end. Bolger gave him a run right to the line, but couldn't quite get it done. So a switcheroo between the two. And Brendan Ross takes race 2. Bolger in P2. And Wayne Whitmore will finish a bit of a distant P3. He'll be frustrated once again, obviously costing himself a couple, well, probably a win. If he had got a decent start with the pace he had, he would have been a very good shout for the win. But poor start once again costing him. Turmo, he could have had a podium. He would have had a podium, but unfortunately, obviously that mistake at turn 1 cost him dearly. And in the end finishes P4. Brian Walsh, a great drive from him. He was caught up in that earlier turn 1 incident, I believe. But a few of the others obviously fell off the road. And he kept it going. He was nice and consistent. Didn't have a spin since. And nice P5 for Brian Walsh. He's continuing his decent spell in these machines. And Cracker just crosses the line in P6. Lee Sanford, he was battling with Brian Walsh for a few of those laps there, but had a couple of spins there at the final turn, which cost him dearly. So he finishes in P7. And then Brownie and Damien were a lap down. Obviously we saw them battling each other as Brendan Ross and Bolger come on by to lap him, and they finished 8th and 9th. Gary Neville in P10, he'll be quite frustrated. Obviously he was a bit quicker than a few of the guys that finished in front of him, but I believe he got caught up in that first lap incident, which dropped him down the field. So he finishes P10. Mike Coulston in P11, bit of a shocker round for him so far. And Glenn Miles, who couldn't replicate his decent result in the first race, he will finish in P12.
Yeah, that was a good second race, some good battles at the front, and good to see some of the cars found themselves some battling practice further down the line. Sad to see that some cars suffered spin, some of them leading to being lapped, and some of them just taking them out of crucial battles. Termo, one notable one that had he not spun that, and especially not to that intensity, he very well easily had a podium on the cards, could have possibly even fought for a win. So I imagine he would be a little filthy with himself, but hopefully he takes that internal emotion and turns it into pace. And we'll see either a good result from him in qualifying or in race 3, or both.
Yes, hopefully. Anyway, I'll take a short break. You two can continue chatting, but I've got to go and set the reverse championship order grid. So if you guys want to just keep talking shit, go ahead, but I've got to obviously sort out the grid for the third and final race tonight.
Alrighty, Scruff, how's your chicken?
Gone.
Going up. I take it that was some good chicken then, if it's gone already.
It was frozen stoner food.
Frozen. Well, don't you normally heat food up before you eat it? I mean, frozen food is not good.
You freeze food, like little chicken dealies, and then stoners will go, I'm hungry, man. And then they'll heat them in like an oven or something.
Ah,
And then
okay.
they'll eat them. And it's really good for when you're drunk and been sitting in a car in the city drinking.
What have you been doing in a car that wasn't yours in the city today, Scruff?
Drinking. Looking at lesbians walk past, grabbing each other's tukuses, which I'm not meant to talk about on air because I thought it was cute and a private moment that they shared between themselves.
I mean,
and now you've gone and forced me to expose it to the world. And
I mean, you didn't name them, nor did you name the suburb or the street they were on. So I think they're anonymity.
no idea where I was.
So yeah, I don't know. What do you want to talk about, Struff? The 2019 season. You're involved with the organisation of all the fun stuffs for Automobilista for Australia. How's all that ticking along?
Pretty much ready. We know what we're doing.
I know somewhat. I'm half paying attention. I'm forced paying more attention to Epic's reeling since I'm commentating over there as well.
It's all full of freaking wet paper bags, mate.
What Epic's reeling? No, it's the level of banter is about equal to what you see in
I like some of them.
AS races.
I like Foley. He's good.
Foley is good. Yeah. Foley is, and I'm not sure if he's mentioned it, so I'm about to possibly ruin his chance for a very big reveal. But he's dragged in Xeris for the Bathurst 3 hour, so that's going to be a scary team to deal with, I reckon.
Nah, Foley will crash. Crazy little ginger.
I think they've got a good balance of pace. It depends on, granted, the GT cars, as I said earlier, rely on pace, but Foley is very much a very sort of thrown in sideways and hope it sticks sort of driver. Xeris is...
He's not really in most series. He's Rossi's making noise. I don't know why. He's in most series. He's much more wheels in line. He's just having issues with catering. For what it seems, it's just his driving style tends to push them a little bit more sideways than what he'd ideally find. But generally, he does like a nice, stable car that he can sort of keep on rails a bit more.
Okay. Well, in that case, then,
Get the fuck out of the commentary, right? You don't know what you're talking about. No.
In that case, then, yeah, he's going to be pretty good in the Bathurst 3 hour, and Xeris.
I think there's too much sun at Bathurst for a ginger. He'll get halfway around. He'll be up the top of the mountain and go, shit, I need some fucking sunscreen.
No, but you see, he's in a car behind like a tinted visor. So, he's got double protection against the sun, and there's under a helmet. So, he should be right.
He's got double protection in his helmet because Bogey's a little bit rough. If either of them are watching this, it's true.
Yeah. No, it's interesting to see how the 3 hour goes from a commentary standpoint. I remember the last time it was a Bathurst Enduro, things got interesting.
I remember that. I was in it.
Yeah, I remember that as well. I remember you being in it.
That's right. It was the greatest battle in AMS Oz history until me and Scott Murrell when I decided to hold Rossi up for a whole stint.
Yeah, that's what were you sort of I'm trying to think we had a driver in Elite that was a big blocker. I know that we've had a couple of guys in Louis is a bit of a bloody blocker. We didn't know Louis, were you?
I preferred, in karting anyway, I preferred just to hang the arse out. The only time I really ever got defensive was championship deciders when I'd do whole races off the racing line trying to keep the guy who was fighting behind me.
I wish I had the pace to do that. I think I only found speed, I think, 2 races.
I never want to do it again.
And one of them was, what was it, Chuke, where I got the fastest car than everyone else and still managed to finish second to Big Dog, who just buggered off and lapped the field.
It was Bert, thank you very much.
Sorry, no, that was Bert. Yeah, that was Bert, sorry.
I still remember after the race hearing you get out of the cart going, I can't believe I won. And then I think it was Dean saying, sorry, you didn't win.
I was asking, did I win? Because I saw no one else in front of me and I battled that hard. Figured, you don't battle that hard for like 12th. So I figured, right, I'm probably somewhere important. I couldn't see anyone else in front of me.
At least you weren't a lap down, just thinking you were fine.
Well, actually, that was interesting. The first race, I went 5 laps down because I was stuck on the bloody curb at the tree hairpin, and the flaggers didn't see me for 5 laps. So I sat there waving my hands. I'm like, "Hello, I'm here. I'm doing nothing. I'm beached on your bloody meter high curb."
First time I raced there was doing one of their 2-hour enduros, and I think it was Bert started the race, and then I did the second stint, and I'd just been hanging the arse of the cart out going through that hairpin, and about halfway through my stint, I had no rear grip because I'd overheated the tyres. And we were talking about it on the way home. I just go, yeah, when you got back in the cart, how slippery was it? He goes, it was fucking horrible for like 5 minutes. So, yeah, I was just hanging the arse out and losing grip the whole time because the tyres were just turning into freaking balloons.
Oh, gee. I don't think I've ever got to the point of overheating rear tyres. I think I had enough problem with the first, almost pretty much every entirety of the Vs. I couldn't even get any heat in the tyres to begin with. I was just not even trying.
It was an interesting issue for me going onto the outdoor tracks when I was used to churnside on the polished concrete where you have to drive it that way. Then you get onto proper tarmac and it just burns the tyres away.
Yeah, it's such a difference going from slick concrete to any sort of proper tarmac. Even for similar karts, yeah, you gotta do a lot of the sideways, and then you try that in real karting, and you just end up perching on a curb somewhere.
I liked Simon at Karting Madness though. He was just terrible. Going past him to lap him was just great.
I think I'm not sure if he locked out with a bad kart there, because that's not a very Simon thing to do.
He doesn't like Karting Madness. So every time he just doesn't have the pace. It's too slippery for him. It's like Ace Cars once. So I had a battle with him for about 3 laps at the start of a race because I was just better on a cold tyres when the kart was moving around more.
Yeah. It's not too bad. It hasn't been too bad with IKC. I think he's still mid-pack, although part of that might be the strength of the guys in IKC. I mean, I'm in there, so it's not filled with fast people.
It was just there was 3 or 4 of us in rounds that were there where we raced there every week and just knew the track a lot better. We were able to actually drive it sideways for a whole lap or 30 laps or whatever it was, and those guys were trying to keep it in line and losing 2 seconds.
Yeah, it's one of the things we think logically. I raced there, what was it, like 2 10-week periods basically in a row. I raced the first 2 seasons. You think I'd be quick there. And then I came up with you guys, and what was it, Brock approached me. I imagine it was probably because I was quick, and he's just like, yeah, nah, you're not. Oh, no, I wasn't quick, but I raced with you guys, and just like, yeah, no, I'll aim for mid-pack. That'll be quick for me.
It's always fun going to other tracks. I thought that one had the most even karts, and then you go somewhere else and you don't know if you got a good kart or not. And Lewis is back.
I am, and I've driven the high kart maybe twice, so that's
We're
my.
only good. Actually, no, it doesn't matter. I'll smash your skull in a high kart. It'd be nice to beat you on pace.
The first time was when I was, I think, 10, and I lapped everybody that I had to. Because
you are a fucking cheat.
It was at my birthday party, and
yeah, alright, they were told to get anyway.
No, they weren't beating me, mate. No chance. And then the other time, I was a few years older, and I was against people that knew what they were doing, and I got beaten.
I hate people that know what they're doing.
Yeah, bit of a shame.
Yeah.
Those scumbags.
Bunch of bastards.
I would love to do it more, but I just don't have the money. Just a bit of a shame. That's just motorsport in general for a lot of people. They just don't have the money.
No, it's not as bad. I think what is it? We average $70-$80 a race meeting, depending on who you go with. The Elite's race. Oh, actually, Elite and IKC are both racing once a month. I think depends on the track you go to. Phillip Island's probably the worst for expenses. Partially travel and partially because Lindsay Fox adds his Lindsay Fox tax to everything. So it's I think $110 for the Phillip Island rounds. But
I stopped doing all those leagues though because it was just whatever the fee was, usually $80. It was just a gamble on whether or not you got a good card at most tracks, and it just wasn't worth it. I mean, there was one race I started second, and by the end of the first or second lap, I was about 5 seconds off second last because it just didn't have the pace.
Yeah.
Whereas in qualifying, I was driving past everyone there, everyone in that race every 2 laps, and you just go, yeah, this is just stupid.
Well, I think the best way IKC do it, where if there's a couple of really obviously duff karts.
Is Kieran still in charge of that?
No, Dean and Simon are running that now.
I was going to say, oh, well, there you go. Simon will still be getting the best kart given to him every time.
Oh, I think he gets some good cuts out there on average. I think someone locked me out the very last, like I say, 2 hour enduro at Tuke. I got given the shittiest cart, which meant that when we swapped carts and reversed the grid, I got the best carts, and I was lapping people, which is a weird thing for me to be doing.
It's pretty weird.
Lewis say something. Oh, he's saying something.
It's pretty weird lapping people, isn't it, Scruff?
It's horrible.
But I'll just touch on actually something you guys spoke about.
You'll touch on it, all right.
In the obviously in race 2 there, that I didn't get a chance to say anything about is just that when you're on your own and you're lapping by yourself in the middle of a race, it can get pretty boring and the race seems to go for a long time. Obviously, I think one thing for me, when I have found myself either leading or I've got a massive gap to whoever's in front of me and whoever's behind me, is that you got to set yourself a lap time, or you've got to find yourself some motivation to keep going. So for me, it's sort of like trying to hit a certain lap time or just trying to hit a certain sector time or apex every lap, and to continue obviously that kind of speed, because if it's very easy to do if you're sort of on your own, to just sort of let your mind wander a little bit and you find yourself making mistakes that you shouldn't be making and you find yourself off the track or in the wall.
In karting, I'd always know the track record for wherever I was, and if I was by myself, I just thought, all right, let's go for it, because you don't have to worry about tyres or fuel in those little sprint races that we used to do. But sim racing, interestingly enough, when you're by yourself at this time of year when it is hot, I reckon it's actually more difficult than it is in a like anything that's open cockpit anyway, because you don't have the air moving over you, so you just sit there burning as all the heat comes out of your computer and just pools in the room and all that, and it's about 50 degrees, whereas at least when you're karting, you get a breeze over you.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I got the same problem sitting here, and I never did I realise I would appreciate those little things of having airflow when I'm driving. You sit here and the West Bitters have got a leather chair, so of course the heat just pulls. And I've got a computer that is older than the one I used to have, although better, and so that creates like a shit ton of heat as well. And so I'm sitting here slowly turning this room into a furnace, and there's no airflow to cool it down, which is a pain.
Yeah, I've actually I've found that even throughout the year, it could be 0 degrees outside, and I still need to find myself. I have to put shorts on, and I have to put a t-shirt on, and most of the time I actually have to have a fan going, because I will end up. I'll end up dripping sweat by the midway point of the race, even if it's cool outside, just from concentration.
Yeah,
I find myself just getting really, really sweaty, even though it's just, you're just sitting there. You're not really doing anything.
When I had the sim rig set up on the desk, I had the computer under it right next to the pedals, and all the heat from the computer would just pull up underneath the desk, and I think I was harassing you after the race once, and I'd just developed this massive blister on my heel from sliding around on the metal base for the pedals, because it was, I reckon it was probably a mid-50s under my desk.
I think I do remember something like that happening, yeah. But I remember, I think the worst I've had it is that for a while there, I was staying in a garage/shed, and if it was sunny outside, it would be about 40 degrees inside the shed. Even if it was like 15 degrees, it would still be bloody warm, and then summer would come around, and good luck.
yeah.
I'll tell you the worst one I had, though. I was doing karting, and I was going into one of the fastest corners at whatever track it was, and every single lap, because I'd had a little bit of a break where I could relax a bit and think on the straights, I go into that corner, fucking mosquito bites on my leg. Right before I was about to turn it, I'm just going, scratch it. Oh shit, I need both hands. Oh fuck. You do the next half lap just going, I'm not itchy, I'm not itchy, I'm not itchy, I'm not itchy. And then you forget about it, and then you come back and you go, I'm not itchy, I'm not itchy, I'm not itchy. That was one of the most uncomfortable experiences I've had, other than just general wedgies and stuff in a go-kart, which is a big problem.
Yeah.
I've had sweat get into my eye, and that's quite uncomfortable.
I swapped from a full face helmet to a motocross one because the goggles have got a little sponge around them.
Well, after all that conversation, we are just about to get going here for race 3, the final race of the night, the reverse championship order grid. And drivers are forming up onto the grid.
If Brian Walsh doesn't win this, I think we should boot him.
That's a bit harsh, Scruff.
Yeah, I'm a bastard.
That certainly is true.
Thank
Yeah, I
you.
wouldn't argue with that.
Alrighty, I'm going to mute you now.
Got someone at the back of the field revving the hell out of their engine. And
It might be Wayne Whitmore. He actually rolled backwards off the start, which is odd because it's a downhill roll to the start-finish lines. I'm not sure how he did that.
well, we're away now on the formation lap. Damien will be the one starting from pole position for race 3. Alongside him on the front row is Mike Coulston. He'll be hoping for a nice clean run. He's had a bit of a shocker of a night tonight, so he'll be hoping to get away cleanly and just have a nice easy race at the front, he'll be hoping. Brownie will start in P3 and Cracker in the exact same car, which makes it nice and easy for us. We'll start alongside him in 4th, followed by Brian Walsh, who finished 5th in the last race as well, so he'll be hoping to maintain or even move up a position or two in this one. And Lee Sanford is alongside him in 6th. In P7, we've got Glenn Miles in the black and magenta liveried car, number 12.
It's pink.
Pink, okay.
No, I'd say magenta.
No, it's pink.
No, it's not ready enough to be pink.
Just a second.
In any case, Gary Neville is in
It's
P8. Brendan Ross will start from P9, but if he continues his hot starts, we'll probably see him up the field very quickly. Termo will start alongside him in 10th. Steve Bolger is 11th.
That's crisp.
And Wayne Whitmore will start at the back of the field. So he's sort of used to starting at the back, but because he's starting at the back, well, this time he hasn't got cars to deal with behind him that could obviously dive bomb him like what happened in race 1. So if he does get a poor start, he doesn't have to worry about what's behind him. It's all about what's in front of him.
I think what will actually benefit him. He has had tidy starts, but he's got the pace to get through the pack. We saw he set the best lap in race 2. But yeah, I think it's actually going to help him to have a tidy start here because based on what we saw in race 2, turn 1 always does on the first lap of any race get interesting, and we might see the same thing here, especially with it being in some cases a reverse-ish grid. I know with Wayne Whitmore at the back and some of the front runners. Steve Bolger also sitting at the back. So a lot of guys who have the pacer at the front aren't at the front and want to get there as soon as possible.
Yeah, so we have seen... Usually it's Brendan Ross is the one to look out for in these races. While Whitmore is pretty decent through the field, we've seen Bolger struggle a little bit, but we're 3 lights, 4 lights and 5 lights just about to get underway. And looks like Rossi got a good start once again. He's up a spot or two. Someone's got a bit of wheel spin and all kinds of smoke there, and it looks like they're 3 wide there for P2.
Ooh, no, they're going.
And they're 4 wide. Yeah, they're 4 wide further back. So this could get a little bit messy here as Brian Walsh goes for the lead into turn 1, outbrakes himself by a good 20 metres. There's a couple cars running wide there. So Brian Walsh will probably go to the back of the field, and there's a couple cars running really wide there. Brendan Ross up into 4th place already. Lee Sanford's up 3 spots, but he's just about to lose out, and does, to Brendan Ross, who's now up to 3rd. And, well, currently, Mike Coulston in the lead, Brownie 2nd, Ross up into 3rd, Lee Sanford 4th, Termo 5th, he's up 5 spots. Damien's had a bit of a shocker from pole, he's down 5. Bolger's up 4. A little bit of contact with Damien there, but he gets by, and he holds on for the moment. And Damien's got Whitmore right behind him, and Cracker, he's dropped down 5. Miles is down 3, and Brian Walsh, who was trying to take the lead, he had a great start, but just got too adventurous going to turn 1, and he finds himself in 11th, and Gary Neville also dropping down 4 spots into...
Termo, we've got Termo off. He's missed the track significantly.
Oh, and Brownie's...
Now down to 9th place is Termo.
Brownie almost lost it coming out of the final corner. He ran wide and got onto the grass, lost the back end a little bit, held the save, well, he saved it, but that allowed Brendan Ross up into P2, so he's in prime position, is Brendan Ross, to...
Don't say anything nice about him whenever we do.
Well, I do believe he's a hero of yours. Is that correct?
He is nobody's hero. And he'll win the race now, guarantee you.
Oh,
now
that-
that I've said he's not my hero,
Well, that's...
there's no way he can lose this race.
Well, that said, Steve Bolger... he's-
Oh, yep.
Oh, Coulston's around. Ross into the lead.
So there it is. Obviously, that moves Ross up into the lead, Brownie up to second, and Steve Bolger's had a pretty good 2 laps here, because he's also up a few spots. He's now in third and not far away from Ross now. He's only 1.2 seconds back, but he's got to clear Brownie quickly if he wants to make a race of it here.
Brownie, he does show some pace in the touring cars, I do believe, although I could be mistaken because I haven't been paying attention lately.
He's been a little bit hit and miss. He's alright some places and a little bit average some, but he's not too bad. And so Whitmore, he got a good exit out of the final turn, and he's now right behind Steve Bolger, and Bolger also got a good run. He's right in the slipstream of Brownie, and will probably have a look into turn 1. He's going to go for it. And
That was
oh, it looks like we've got Ross
Whitmore's
off.
got him too.
Ross is off it as well. So Ross outbroke himself into turn 1. He drops down to 5th. No, he drops down to 7th place. But
yeah, Steve Bolger's inherited the lead there.
Yes.
Whitmore right behind him, he got through on Brownie at the same time, and these two will have a bit of a scrap here.
And
Brownie goes around in the background.
he's off into the boonies. He's, oh, there's another car off. Behind that, that's Damien. That's Damien at turn 4. Looks like he got his outside tyres out on the grass, and that sent him around. So Ross had a little bit of a gap over these guys, and he's thrown it away. And he now finds himself in the position that Whitmore has been in the first 2 races. So he's got a little bit of work to do now, as Bolger and Whitmore battle it out for the lead.
Yeah,
Whitmore not looking like he's going to put too much into trying to get through him just now. Looks like he might be trying to play the patient game.
I mean, you say that and he set the best lap.
Yeah, but he also hasn't tried to have a move. But Bolger going defensive, not really giving him much choice there. Whitmore, he's just got the pace. I don't think he even really needs to try and actually make the move. I think he'll just get through just based on pace alone.
Well, he's much better through that final sector, and in particular, obviously, the final corner. And if you give these cars a little bit of a slipstream, it's a fairly long straight for these cars. You'd think that he'd get this done probably in the next couple of laps, but I think for obviously Brendan Ross, he'll be hoping that these guys obviously continue to battle throughout the race just to bring himself back into contention. But he finds himself stuck behind Cracker at the moment.
I have also just suggested that people might try and race smart in AMS Oz, and that's something that we're both very aware is a rare trait.
Yeah, so some people, especially early on in races, seem to go for some manoeuvres that probably you don't need to make, but
they go for last lap moves
on lap 3.
Lap 2 and lap 3.
And it doesn't work out well, so hopefully people do start to learn to be a little bit more patient. Obviously, we've seen it with Bolger and Ross in the first 2 races were pretty patient. So we'll see if Whitmore is just as patient with Bolger.
Looks like he's trying to set up the drive out, but looked like he may have just been held up a bit on the apex there was Whitmore.
Yeah, Bolger's doing a good job of parking that car on the apex where and when needs be.
These straights are about as straight as Elton John.
The first one's only a slight kink, but I definitely agree with you on the back straight.
Well, I mean, everyone's got a slight kink.
Oh,
And behind Bolger and Whitmore, Ross has got past Cracker now.
Big slide there from Whitmore, sorry, Lewis.
Bit of a slide from Bolger as well, so monkey see, monkey do.
They're not that clever.
That's actually given Whitmore's actually dropped a couple tenths from Bolger through all that. Gap was about 0.3 of a second. It was 7, but
Wide there from Bolger.
Whitmore
Whitmore with another big slide though.
He had closed up quite a bit under braking.
Bolger was very wide in the first part of what appears to be a double apexer, and then Whitmore just losing the arse a little bit on the second part of the corner allowed the gap to stretch back out to about where it was.
I think for Bolger, actually having Whitmore pretty close coming into the final turn might actually be a little bit of a blessing, because it'll balk Whitmore just enough to hold him up, because that's where Whitmore's biggest advantage is under braking at that final corner. And if Whitmore's a little bit further back and gets that decent run through there, that will allow him to get a decent run, obviously, into turn 1. So
Yeah, there was another hairpin where the same thing happens. It's Whitmore's closing in quite a lot in the mid part of the corner, and it's just stopping him from being able to keep the foot down. As he gets, he's lost it, but he's got it and he's found it.
You're just driving a little bit too hard. He's still got 10 laps to go. There's no need to drive that hard, especially when obviously he does have a little bit of a pace advantage over Bolger, but now he's got a little bit of work to do to close that gap back down.
Yeah, he does. That was... I mean, they're both going for little slides here and there. Bolger's been doing it as well, but that was... He's pushing a bit too hard. He's still got 10 laps left to go, and he was safely there, that he could just wait on Bolger to make a mistake. So yeah, push it a bit hard there, which he didn't need to do, and he's paid for that, and he's gonna have to fix it. He's gonna have to fill in that hole he's dug.
Well, we'll just cut back to Gary Neville further down the field, and he's had a spin. I believe that's turn 7 or 8, the hairpin leading on to that little back straight where obviously sector 2 ends. Yep, ran a little bit wide on the grass, outside tyres while accelerating around. He went. So he's having a bit of a mare at the moment.
Whitmore's pushing hard again. He was very sideways into, I think, turn then into turn 5, and was also to turn 5 as well. Keeping it, nice and straight through turn 6. That's a nice change. But yeah, he's overdriving it, I think, just a little bit. And he showed himself as well as everyone else. He had the pace in race 2. So I'm not sure, unless he feels like he's going to be challenged further on pace this race, that he needs to push harder again, or I don't know, but he's definitely pushing it.
Certainly is. It's 3/10 up over Bolger in the first split, but they sort of match in the middle sector. That's Whitmore, fantastic final sector. He sets another fastest lap of the race, a 13.6. So it didn't take these guys too long to get into the 13s. They set one on the second or third lap, but once they started battling, obviously they did drop a little bit of lap time as Whitmore drifts it through turn 1.
Was Butch. That was Butch. Where's Jamie Snow? He'd have an enlarged organ over that one.
No, he's too busy having some macchiato of some kind because he's some hipster bitch. So
he's fucking drinking. He's dipping it in his fucking rosé.
Yeah, that's it. Bloody
I don't even know
hipster.
what that is.
It's Whitmore.
Freaking man bun wearing sack of crap.
It's Whitmore once again, 2/10 up in the first split, so he pulls a bit of time. Obviously, he gets a bit of time coming out of the final turn, and obviously pretty quick through turn 1 as well.
Looks like Ross may have had a bit of an off in the last lap or so. He was
15
about 4 seconds off, a bit more, but he's lost another 2 seconds.
Yeah, 1 minute 15.2 for Rossi that last lap around, which is quite average compared to obviously what the leaders have been doing throughout both the races. It's about a second off what you'd at least want to be doing. There's another 6/10 faster was Whitmore than Bolger on that lap. So
Whitmore only 2/10 off his best lap on the previous time round, so definitely on the limit here is Whitmore, as we've already established watching him go around like he was in Tokyo Drift. Except without the threat of Godzilla.
Was that in Tokyo Drift, was it?
yes.
Godzilla is Tokyo, mate. Go out there and do some fucking learning. I was gonna just carry on.
Oh, and Bolger on this lap, he's got sideways a couple times now, and that gap is now under a second between himself and Whitmore behind.
Yeah, Bolger sort of, again, he's going for it a bit hard as well. He has the lead, and up until this point, and for the last couple of laps, he had a pretty safe gap on it too. Whitmore's coming, but Whitmore catching, Whitmore passing are two very different things. So, yeah, the last lap, that was a second down on, almost a second down on his best. So, yeah, it needs to dial it down just a little bit. He does have the lead, and there is 6 laps left to go, so he's still got plenty of time to defend it. And yeah,
There's no discrepancy between the tyres for the leaders either, so it's just going to come down to who's got the biggest set between the legs.
Bolger has struggled a little bit through turn 1 and the final turn, so if he wants to hold on to the lead, he's going to need to get the final corner right.
But with a name like Bolger, you'd expect his set is bigger.
You would hope so.
I've been wanting to make that joke for 2 seasons.
bloody hell.
Get out.
It's taken you long enough.
Yeah, well...
Yeah, Bolger's going to need to. He's going to need to be able to get that last corner and the first corner as well, but especially the last corner right, because Whitmore's been getting that right pretty comprehensively across the last couple of races, and that leads onto the biggest straight, almost straight in on the track. And if he can't get the speed out of it, he's basically opening the door for Wayne Whitmore to just come flying past him.
Well, Whitmore was a lot better under braking that time, but he was actually too close and had to back out of obviously getting on the throttle as early as what he would have liked. So
he could have a run here though, does Whitmore? He's right inside the anus of Bolger.
You know, it'd take a fair overtake to and a fair set to have a go into turn 3 there. It's not
every corner's a passing opportunity.
This is why people end up on their roofs in sim racing.
I hardly hit anyone.
Depends on the sim racing. Depends on the sim, actually.
Ooh,
So I hardly hit anyone. We're talking about me here. No, we're talking about me.
Bolger runs a little bit wide there, and that's allowed Whitmore right behind him. So I wonder if Whitmore will have a go into the final corner. No, he sort of backs out of it a little bit, and he's a bit conservative. And
I think he's trying to use that speed through it, but his best bet is probably to try and show Bolger a wheel in and try and unsettle him, because he's just going to wind up being held up through the corner.
Well, that's right. But he's got a good run this time out, but Bolger's gone defensive early, as he has the last couple of laps. He's going to force Whitmore to go around the long way.
Oh, both locking up there.
And a side by side, and Whitmore's going to get a good run here. He might get it done into turn 3. In fact, he will. That is a fair overtake.
He's backed out of it.
Backed out of it.
What a pussy.
Either way, fantastic racing between these two. Obviously, no contact between either of them. As
Whitmore's lost it.
Oh, I was about to say, he nearly gets the win
track.
and then nearly spins it.
What?
Yeah.
I don't know what the last 3 letters of that sentence were.
No, I think you know.
Kent.
I think it's wrong to call people cunts on air.
I mean, you just did it then.
No, I didn't. I just said cunt. I didn't call anyone a cunt.
I'm pretty sure you would have done it at some point.
Pretty much every broadcast, you cunt.
Oh, there you go.
Well,
Now that we've finished arguing, Lewis,
Yeah.
if you'd like to do some serious commentary.
well, after all that, Bolger has got 2.4 seconds over Whitmore, and he's got 3 laps to hold on.
How many times in this series have we had what looks to be as Coulston gets past DeMayan, what looks like it could be a good finish to a race just wind up being an utter disappointment?
That's happened in pretty much every race so far. Although, that said, Johannesburg was pretty competitive. There was some good racing.
We have a yellow flag. I think it's DeMayan who's...
Oh, gee, that's Gary
Coulston.
Neville's off as well, I think.
Coulston has just gone a
So
lap
it's
down
Coulston.
from the leaders. DeMayan,
He's
Miles and Walsh not too far away from us, so they
DeMayan's
may run
got-
into some traffic.
DeMayan's got Bolger right behind him, and Bolger will be hoping he gets out of the way right quick.
Get out the way. God help us.
God help us.
God help us.
Yeah, he is. He is still floating there, and he is slightly
Oh, he's lost
backing
half-
up.
He's lost 1.5 seconds. Is that Damien
No.
didn't quite get out of the way there, and now there's Whitmore right behind. Whitmore's going to take advantage of that. So
I think
That's-
words may need to be had on that.
Yes, that's all down to Damien. That pass was executed. He wasn't actively balking him, but he hasn't heeded this blue flag for almost for just over half a lap
Oh, but
now.
Bolger's gone for the
Oh,
overtake. A little bit of argy-bargy, and he couldn't quite get it back.
We got handbags. We got handbags.
Well, he had a crack. Thankfully, no damage by the looks of it for either driver. Obviously, damage on 50% as, well, there goes Damien.
All the mine's gone around.
Bolger would have been hoping that happened a lap earlier.
As we have
Brian Walsh.
someone.
It's Brian Walsh.
as well, yeah.
So, Bolger now, he's got all the work to do to get back into the lead. And
He will not be a happy man after the race when I mute myself and refuse to ask him any questions.
Well, that's quite disappointing that you won't ask any questions.
Rossi can do it.
As Glenn Miles gets out of the way for the leaders. Bolger has...
Whitmore not really pulling away here. It looks like Bolger has closed it in by 0.3 just in that final sector.
Obviously, there was Glenn Miles that he had to deal with, so that would have cost him a little bit, but not too much.
Oh, my Wi-Fi just shut itself. Give me a sec.
What do we think about Wi-Fi, Lewis?
It's crap.
About as good as a wife.
Well, Bolger ran wide on the exit of turn 1 there, and the gap has stretched out to a second now, so barring a mistake, although Whitmore has made a number of those in this race.
Can see more tips with Wi-Fi though.
You can. I mean, you're not wrong there.
Yes.
I'd make a good best man. Don't do it!
You would.
If you're thinking about getting married, give me a call. I don't want to marry you, but I can stop you from marrying someone else.
Well, it looks like the battle for the lead's probably dying down a little bit. Looks like Whitmore stretching away now. So barring a mistake or lap traffic, he should hold on. Further back though, Cracker and Turmo battling it out for 4th place. And Turmo having to lift out a little bit through the kink. And now he's got to set himself up through the final corner. Takes a very narrow line, which cost him a little bit of exit speed.
Miles and Coulston having a good little scrap further back in the pack for 10th place.
Turmo having a look, but not going to be close enough into turn 1. Cracker does
That
go...
little battle's now fallen to shit, so don't worry about that.
Cracker did go defensive, and it did compromise a little bit through the entry, but Turmo's ran wide on the exit, and that's going to allow Cracker to have a bit of breathing room. We are on the final lap. There's Brendan Ross in 3rd, runs wide, but he's got
16 seconds of breathing room behind him.
yeah, so it doesn't matter too much for him. Wayne Whitmore coming through the final turn of the...
Will he have one final spin? No, he's got out there well.
So he takes a win. He'll be happy to claim 1 win from the evening. Was sort of gifted to him by lap traffic, as Steve Bolger puts his car into the barrier after obviously being balked.
Probably should have had a target for that one, if we're honest.
And Brendan Ross, who was into the lead very quickly, had a great start once again, but...
Mate, Brian Walsh is the best start. That guy's a hero. Not my hero, he's just a hero.
It's Cracker holds on, so Turmo did try and fight back, but Cracker did hold on, and Turmo will finish in P5. Lee Sanford has still got about a couple of corners to go. He's got Brownie 2 seconds behind him. Brownie drifting it and almost spinning it there, the final turn. But Lee Sanford will cross the line in P6. And Brownie will finish P7. And Gary Neville in 8th has had a spin, but because he wasn't lapped, that's where he'll finish.
There's a lot of death.
There certainly is. So Gary Neville is going to struggle across the line. He'll finish P8. Brian Walsh a lap down, P9. Mike Coulston, P10. Glenn Miles, 11th. And Damien in 12th place. place. As I believe that's Gary Neville running into Cracker or Brownie there and ending up on his roll hoop. So rest in peace, Gary Neville. And fairly entertaining evening of the Rookie Cup, with pretty much all the races going down to the wire, although a bit of a shame that Bolger was held up at the end of that third race, which cost him the lead, and obviously a good battle between himself and Whitmore. That said, though, Whitmore's pace probably deserved a race win, but the first two races he cost himself by having absolute mares off the start-finish line. And, Brendan Ross in that third race, he'll certainly be kicking himself. Fantastic start, and then, he just had a brain fade, outbroke himself into turn one, and dropped himself down to 4th or 5th place.
Yeah, that was some great racing across that third race. I missed the last of it. I think my Wi-Fi card in my new computer shut itself completely and just refused to accept there was a connection there. But the bits I did see, yeah, that was some great racing, some great battling at the end between Bolger and Whitmore for the lead.
Yeah, it's something, obviously, in all the races we've seen, this round, that we've actually seen a few battles where, pre-Johannesburg, so from pretty much the first 3 rounds, we didn't really see too much battling on track, but it seems that the field is tightening up a little bit, and we've seen some really good battles, obviously, in the last 2 rounds, and we hope that continues throughout, because these are cars that we do want to run again after, obviously, after this series ends. It's going to move to a Super 2 kind of format, so there will be supercars for next season, but we do hope to run these again in the summertime, so hopefully people can get a grip to them, we see more great racing, and people will welcome driving these things once again.
Yeah, they seem to be pretty popular cars, getting some good grid numbers and getting new guys into it, and they're not as intimidating as something like a Super 2 car. So whether it's the aspect of Super 2 V8, they're a good tool for a Rookie Cup, because they're not outwardly overly intimidating cars to get into.
Certainly. Well, we've got pretty much the entire field in TV time. This happens every time on Monday nights. I wish less people would come in, but it makes it difficult for us. But I think we'll cut to Brendan Ross first up. He had a very entertaining evening, it must be said. He had fantastic starts in each of the rounds. What is there any secret you have to getting these cars off the line as well as you do? Do you practice, or how do you do it?
No secret, I think. I don't know, just very much luck, probably. Luck decides it all, but yeah, just really good starts from me, so nothing to explain it by, but yeah, just pure luck, I think.
Do you hold the clutch down and then let it go, or do you have it in neutral, rev it out, and then shift up?
To be honest, I try not to think about it, so I dare say it's probably the latter of the two.
I see. Try not to give anything away to your rivals that you keep outstarting, I see.
Maybe.
That said, obviously the first 2 races, you and Stu have had fantastic battles throughout. Obviously you led the majority of race 1, but you couldn't quite hold on. And you couldn't quite get Steve back either towards the end. But in that second race, you must have felt pretty good after obviously turning the tables on him there.
Yeah, it was good to get a bit of redemption. I felt like especially the first race, I felt it was a bit of a race of attrition. I felt like the person who was going to come out the winner, they were going to not have to make the mistake where second place might have. But both of us didn't make any too big of a mistake to actually impede us both, other than just sort of a little brain fade on my side of things to let him pass. But that was some really close racing, and it was good to get back in race 2 and fight just as hard.
Well, that was it. In sort of both race 1 and 2, both you and Steve didn't really make mistakes in either, which is a bit I wouldn't say surprising, but it's not something we've seen too often. Obviously, this Rookie Cup, where usually it's been one of the drivers battling for the lead has ended up going off, and whoever's in the lead ends up just having a nice cakewalk home. So it's good to see, obviously, you guys stick at it in both races 1 and 2 there.
Yeah, so sort of good hard racing that's going on. So it's just good to see just skill levels all roll, just little skill levels evolve all round during the season. It's really starting to show some true pace between some drivers.
Which is fantastic to see. One more question though. In that third race there, obviously, once again, another fantastic start, but on the second or third lap there, you just got a bit hot into turn one and you ruined the race for yourself.
Massive brain fade. Just didn't pick me mark, and from there I knew as soon as I put the brake down that I messed it up totally. So that was just one big brain fade on my part.
Was it perhaps were drivers perhaps getting a little bit tired or just losing a bit of focus? Because you saw quite a number of the drivers in that final race there making more mistakes than what they had in the previous two.
You could say so. I know, thinking to myself, I was probably getting a little too complacent. Just probably got not too good of a start, but I felt like I probably could have just held the lead a little bit better rather than sort of push it out and hopefully not allow the other guys to catch back up.
Fair enough, but obviously, congratulations on you're on the podium in every race, winner of race two, and second place in race one. So well done on a pretty successful round, Rossi.
Yep. Thank you, and hopefully it's just good the next coming round.
All right, we'll cut to our race one winner in Stuyve. Obviously, Steve, you got a good start in that first race as well as the second, but in that first race, you must have thought, oh gee, I'm gonna end up in the lead. But Rossi just got that better start, and he had to work for it quite a bit there.
Yeah, bogged down just after I got off the line in the second. Rossi got past, and then it was a real good battle. Great fun, both of the first two races. Third race was a bit difficult and a bit disappointing at the end there, but very happy to have a clean night after a messy one last night.
Yeah, obviously both you and Rossi throughout obviously the first two races were sharing sort of lap times, and neither of you could sort of break the toe of each other, and it was really down to just a slight mistake from each of you in each of those races, which decided both of them.
Yeah, I felt really comfortable behind him in the first race, like I had more pace. As soon as I got past, I couldn't make a gap, so it was just much easier to follow.
Certainly. And then
yeah, it was good fun tonight.
It certainly looked like a bit of fun for you guys out there, even though it was a little bit of a tricky circuit for a lot of the drivers. But that third race there, obviously, it wasn't your best race even before the incident towards the end, but obviously you found yourself in the lead regardless after battling away through with the reverse grid. But yeah, obviously you come up to lap traffic and it sort of, it did ruin your race for you.
Well, as soon as I got to the lead and I saw Wayne behind me, I knew he had the speed, so I wasn't going to get away. I was feeling a bit defensive at that point. And then I thought I had him covered. He got alongside at one point and then had a bit of an iffy moment and I got a couple of seconds out, but then hit the traffic. That's the races.
Yeah, a bit unlucky. Did ruin what would have been probably a grandstand finish in the end, because you didn't look like you were going to yield all that easily in the end, but unfortunately it sort of tipped your hand a bit. But still, pretty successful round. Obviously, a first and a second, and in the first two races, and then, once again, a second in the third race. So a pretty good round for you.
Yeah, really good to get up on the winner's box for once this season after watching Wayne disappear into the distance for the first few rounds. So it's a much better outing.
Certainly, and hopefully the rest of the season goes a bit, much like it did this evening for you.
Hope so, thank you.
All right, now final interview, obviously with Mr. Whitmore. You had the pace, obviously in qualifying. You were a bit quicker than a couple of tenths faster than second place guy in Stuyve. On pole comfortably in both those races, but you just went nowhere off the start-finish line, and it's it ruined both the first two races for you.
Yeah, it certainly did. Whatever Rossi does, I got to learn because I can't get it off the line.
Well, certainly, and then obviously you did get caught up in a couple incidents in that first race, which I'm sure would have been frustrating, but still, you fought your way back to fourth place, which is not a mean feat around really that circuit, which is pretty tight and twisty.
Yeah, way too many mistakes. I was overdriving in the end. But yeah, I was happy to get up that high and then had a good battle. And then, as you say, the traffic took over for Steve in the last one. But you got to take it as the cards fall, and it was there, so I had to go.
Yeah, still in that final race, it did look like you were overdriving it just a little bit at times because you were obviously early on, you were behind Steve, and you just made one or two uncharacteristic really for you so far in the Rookie Cup, where you made a couple of mistakes that dropped you back a bit, but in the end you got back into the lead and you never looked back.
Yeah, well, that's true. The touch of the wheel on the grass is coming out of that last bend is always touchy. You're just pushing the limits too much track width and just touch the left wheel and turn me around. The undulation showed these cars up because it actually unloads the car more than you realise, and you get on the power early and the car's sideways before you know.
Yeah, we did see a few drivers struggling with that as well as yourself, so it wasn't just you. But obviously, you got a couple pole positions. You would have been obviously a bit frustrated with the way the first two races went, but still, winner in the third race. So I think you've won a race in every round so far. So you're having a pretty good season so far, and you'll be hoping it continues for the rest of the year.
Yeah, enjoying the battles. Can't wait till next time. Thanks.
Alright, and that'll just about do us, but we'll just go over just a couple of the upcoming events here at Automobilista Australia. This Sunday we have the Bathurst 3 Hour, so the files for that are available on Discord. There is obviously a GT3 mod that you need to download for that, as well as a BOP update. So anybody that is interested, that is on Sunday, next Sunday, and practice starts at, I believe, the race starts at, I believe, 4 o'clock. I just have to check Discord, but it is around midday. It's a unusual start time for us, but we don't want it to have, obviously we don't want to start it too late and have it finishing at like midnight or anything like that. So just let me have a look. Information. Yes, so official practice for the Bathurst 3 Hour is at 2:30 Australian Eastern Daylight Time, and the race starts at 4 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. And just a word of note, the race starts at 5:30 in-game, so it will be dark, so you might need to map a headlight button for that. And that is this coming Sunday, the 10th of February. You are able to have co-drivers for that, so if you can't race the full 3 hours, that's fine. Grab a mate and they can jump in and race as well. Next Monday, the Automobilista Australia touring cars are back, and they are at the Ulton Park Island circuit, so they're doing a little bit of British touring cars over there, so that'll be very interesting around the bumpy circuit over there in England. And then the following Sunday is the first round of the Automobilista Australia GT3 World Challenge. So for those that are interested, the information for that is up on Discord and Facebook. This is obviously tonight we're joined by Scruff and Rhodey. So thank you both for coming along and giving me a hand.
That's all right. Thanks to Matthew and Scruff for letting me come in and join your party, and might be back next time where the rookies are out.
Well, you'll certainly be welcome. And Scruff, hopefully you're not dead over there, mate.
Bless your soul, lad.
God help us.
God help us.
Alright, so that will do us from Automobilista Australia, and we hope to catch pretty much everybody at the Bathurst 3 Hour on Sunday. So those that tuned in, thanks for coming along.
So long, you bastards.
God help us.